Welcome to Journey Through the Gate, your paranormal portal podcast, as we delve into the many questions and wonders brought on by the supernatural experience. What's on the other side of the gate? Let's find out together. Hello, my beautiful gatekeepers, and tonight we have an absolute Sunday treat for you. And I can see you're all in here already talking about bacon sundaes, so I want to put my 2 cents in on that and say it would have to be bacon caramel, either on chocolate chip mint or fudge ripple. I don't know, I might be reaching too far on that one, but anything with bacon on it is just better, so there you go. Welcome, Donnie, Cassie, my beautiful oracles and beyond, Salvador, Maraid, Glenn, I know Blue is in here, Linda, hello. Tonight is going to be so cool because not only do we get Steve Stockton 2 nights in a row, but we have a wonderful guest for you that I'm going to let Steve introduce. So let's bring this old rattlesnake in here. Come on up in here, baby.
Hey, what's going on, everybody?
How you doing?
Doing great. A little cold and rainy here. We got a winter weather advisory.
I still got my little beanie on.
It was 70 degrees the other day, and now they're saying we might get snow in the Willamette Valley. So
good gracious!
Welcome to the Pacific Northwest in springtime.
My feet were cold yesterday, and today it was hot, and then I had to put a sweater on. I don't know what the world's coming to. Good Lord. All right, so all these wonderful people in here. And Edna, hello, darling. Chris. If you see anybody you want to holler out to, you go right ahead. Mods, we're going to ask you to do, extra duty tonight, and I know you're ready to bake those shut the fuck up cakes if somebody busts in this wonderful chat. And Laura, hello, darling. And hey, Gray, how you doing, love? And
Blue Crossroads is here. Laura Elizabeth, Linda Lee Chavez, Chris Jarvis, and Edna. They're the usual suspects. Salvador Soto, Donnie Cho, Master Cho is in the chat there.
How you doing, sweetie? Make sure you go back and hit that thumbs up because it does absolutely help. You know, why? Because we love YouTube, right? So share it out. You're going to want to share this one out because we're going to go in all different directions. We titled this one tonight, When the Journey Meets the Road. And what that means to me is anytime I want to get my mind stretched a little bit and I want to get outside the box and take another visual and another conscious look at things, I turn this gentleman on, and he's been turning on his audience for an awful long time, and I'm going to yield to Steve to tell a little story to bring him on in here. But as from what I heard, little birdie told me, Steve, I wouldn't even know you and you wouldn't know me, and this whole monster would have never been built.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I don't even remember how I came to be on Seriah's show, Where Did the Road Go? Mm-hmm. I think I reached out to him when my first book had just came out, and he had me on, and it blew up. I don't remember. I could look and see how many views it's had, but it's a lot. And I have so many people to this day that on my channel and whatnot. We just passed 180,000 subscribers over there, by the way. Nice. I get so many people in the comments that say, I first heard you years ago on Where Did the Road Go, and I've followed you ever since. So Seriah basically unleashed me on the world and put you and I together. Yeah, one day he messaged me, and he's got somebody I think you'd like to talk to. And I think you hadn't been on the show. You were just emailing him or messaging in or something like that. I
was on a listener show.
Was that it? Okay.
Mm-hmm. A listener story. I told him the Gettysburg story, and Seriah is he's not a skeptic. He's not a debunker. He likes to look at things in many different levels. And I think it's really good to look at everything that way, especially if you've got a story and you think it's gone one way. Steve and I, we love to get somebody else's perspective and go, what? And 40 years later, we've got this new aspect to the story and a new way to look at it, and I think that's what we're all here for, to try to get some of us want our minds blown, we want to be a little scared, but it's just amazing. Go ahead, sweetie.
But indeed, that spark of whatever, that je ne sais quoi was there, so we exchanged information, I think, through him, and then I called you one day. I remember it was on a Sunday. So I
Mm-hmm.
was living in inner southeast Portland at the time, and I sat out on my back porch. And I think we started around noon, 1 o'clock, something like that, my time. And we were still talking, and it was dark outside. We
Yep.
talked literally, I think it was like 7 hours the
Mm-hmm.
first time, because one of us would tell a story, and that would remind the other one of a story, and we chased several tangents. But
Mm-hmm.
we're
But it's
we're
all
here
because of this man.
today because of this man that we've got here tonight. So bring him on in here,
Bring him on in
Seriah
here.
Azkath.
The host and producer of Where Did the Road Go? Welcome in.
Hey,
You want to back out now?
nope, absolutely not.
So that's it. You're to blame for all this. There wouldn't be a book. I wouldn't have one if it wasn't for Zariah and Steve. And I would have never ventured out into a podcast asking questions and, learning how to enjoy the journey. You know what I mean? And I think that was kind of your concept. When I first found your podcast, I'm like, where does the road go? You know, I'd
Yep.
love to see it because at, native bringing up, it was always enjoy the journey.
Hmm.
Every
It's just
aspect
the
of it, good and
name
bad.
that evokes
Hmm.
the name of the show.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
And also, he's got a great music show, Last
Yes.
Exit for the Lost.
Yes.
It's WVBR FM, Ithaca, New York.
There
Yeah.
it is.
Or you
You're
can just,
on there.
or you can stream it at thelastexit.org anytime.
Yeah,
Excellent.
it's an awesome show. I've messaged him before, like, do you have a playlist? 'Cause I hear
Hmm.
stuff on there, and I love it. It's not for everybody, certainly, but it's some good stuff.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
you're on the
So Steve,
campus of Cornell, is that right? Is that right?
well, hang on. So Steve, the
We're
first
getting a
time we
little
talked,
echo.
are we getting an echo?
We're
The
getting a
time we
titch of
talked
an
was
echo.
March 14th, 2014.
2014. So it's been a
Wow.
while. What's that, 8 years almost?
Yep. Yep.
But it's been great, hasn't it? I
Oh,
mean,
it
being
has.
able to delve into talking to people, not just talking to people and hearing their stories and their experiences, which is, I think we're all into this. I mean, we're all, many of us are cross legged on the floor in front of the big old zenith, just asking for, a UFO show or an in search of or an unsolved mystery just to try to figure it all out, get our minds working, But Zariah, you started out early with, you don't say you're an experiencer, but yet you've had experiences. So, how would you explain how you got on this road and started enjoying this journey, man?
Well, I always was interested in this stuff. I want to jump back real quick to Steve's
Sure.
question. VBR is on the edge of Cornell's campus, but it's an actual FM commercial radio station, not affiliated with Cornell. And since COVID, I've been running everything from my house. We built a performance studio for bands, and I'm sitting in my main studio now where we record everything.
And
Because they
you have some awesome bands on there. And then for a while there, you were going back and digging up this old footage of like bands
oh
from
yeah,
the 80s and 90s that came through the air. And it was great to see some of those, some that I'd seen before when they were on tour way back in the day, little tiny bands. And just, it's
Yep.
amazing. But I love the archival stuff that you've got going on there too.
As for how I got into this, I was always interested in the paranormal. That was just something that was always there. But as far as the experiences, that probably started when when my Kundalini woke up. So that was a living hell for like a decade before I found out what it was, because there was no paradigm for it in our culture at the time. Um,
Explain what that word means. There's a lot of people in here, and I find, I've looked it up, and how do you describe Kundalini?
so Kundalini is just the Sanskrit word for it. I mean, there's words in all different cultures for it, but basically it's an energy force that everyone has at the base of their spine. For most people, it's asleep. Now, there's forms of yoga and stuff like that that are especially attuned to it to wake it up and raise it up the spine. Mine just woke up, and I found a lot of people over the years that had the same experience. It just wakes up one day, they have no idea what's going on. It causes all kinds of things, from physical ailments to mental issues. If it gets severe enough, it can cause things like schizophrenia. It can be mistaken for epilepsy. It's because our Western culture has nothing to deal with this. So when this started happening to me, it was a lot of pain along my spine, and I would see hallucinations, and I knew they were hallucinations. I'd see smoke where I knew there wasn't smoke. I would hear cans rattling when there were no cans around. And these are all very common Kundalini things. But I didn't know that. There was nothing around at the time to tell me that. So I went to therapists, I went to all kinds of doctors, and everyone gave me a clean bill of health. And my parents eventually just thought I was faking it, which I wasn't. But of course, how do I prove that when doctors are saying, no, he's super healthy, you know?
And that's the hard start for a lot of people that are just trying to figure out what the hell is going on, whether it's, they're seeing dead people or they're, hearing voices and, they turn out to be, they're just a great medium or they're getting, something from here. I know I had a lot of people in my 20s to 30s where I was bumping into that had been told they were schizophrenic, but they weren't.
Yeah.
They were just had abilities. And I think that's one thing, like you said, that the Western, we just tend to throw all kind of medicines on it where, the native culture, they would, encourage it in its time, as well as, a lot of, like you said, the, Indian cultures and stuff like that, all around the globe. It's us that just wants to throw medicine at it, and shut it up.
I remember talking to Karen Crisis, who used to be the vocalist of Crisis and is now in Gospel of the Witches. And she, like the first few times I met her, dealing with her band, she never said anything about anything weird happening to her, because apparently she hid it. She shut it off as much as she could. But once she kind of embraced it, she was telling me, like, as she was growing up, she went on a date with the guy, and she's in this crowded restaurant, and she keeps bumping into people and apologizing. And finally, her date goes, "Who are you talking to?" And he didn't see any of the people, and apparently the restaurant was mostly empty.
Oh, my goodness.
But it was so real to her that she didn't, and then she thought, oh, my God, am I crazy?
Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? I worked in a little cafe in Oak Ridge in my teenage years. We had a lady that would come in, sit at a table by herself, and carry on these long, lengthy conversations with somebody on the other side of the table who I couldn't see, and she would listen and nod her head and acknowledge things, sometimes laugh at whatever they were saying. And it makes you wonder, was she really maybe it was a situation like this where she was experiencing something, but everybody that worked there was just like, oh, she's crazy, don't bother her, she's harmless.
Right.
That's it. And I think a lot of mediums, and the same thing, like I said, they're just not sure. I mean, even think of like the Sixth Sense as a reference, a visual reference. I see dead people. Well, nobody else is seeing them. Now, what they would do to that child, even saying in school, they don't call your mother if you draw pictures of rainbows. He wanted to draw the things he was seeing. And I've got many friends, off the top of my head, same thing. They just tried to shut it down. Now, when you try to shut that down, Seriah, I've heard you talk a lot about this before, and Steve and I have talked about it. It's going to find a way out.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And that can cause
many
things.
All kinds of physical problems.
Give us some of the ideas, not just for yourself to make yourself physical, physical problems, sickness, all kinds of things. But, it can make you think you have a really noisy ghost in the house.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Rampant PK energy is definitely part of it, as well as electrical effects. I dealt with a girl a few years ago who had I can't remember the name of the condition, but basically her bladder would eat the inside lining of itself.
Oh, my God.
And it was incredibly painful. And she had been going to doctors for almost 10 years for it, and no one could actually do very much. She would tell me that her normal pain level, like what would be a 1 for everyone else, or I'm sorry, what a 1 for her would be like a 5 for everyone else.
Wow.
She was just in consistent pain. And after just a little bit of working with her Kundalini, because I could feel it, she had it running through her, I moved it around, and much to my surprise, it totally healed itself.
Wow.
It was just blocked there for whatever reason. Of course, not having any idea what it was, Doctors weren't treating it. She didn't know anything to do about it. And I'm
Yeah.
thinking, I don't know that I can do anything. I don't know if it's the Kundalini. And then she said that acupuncture was the only thing that helped. And I went,
Uh-huh.
oh, so it's energy. Okay.
Mhm.
Nice.
And a lot of people don't take that into consideration. We as humans, we're a trifold being. We're a physical side, a spiritual side, and a mental side.
Yeah.
And problems in any one can affect problems in the other. So if
Absolutely.
something's manifesting physically, it doesn't necessarily mean it's just a physical ailment. It could be
Right.
on either
Right.
one of the other two realms. And it's fascinating when you look into stuff like that. But whatever works is the way I look at things like that. If
Yeah.
you were able to get her some relief, that's what it was. That took care of it.
Yeah.
And amazing.
It amazed the hell out of me. I didn't think I was going to be able to help her.
Right.
I figured maybe I'd be able to make her, deal with the energy a little better. I didn't realize it was causing the entire problem. And she didn't even want to. And when it stopped, the funny thing is she didn't want to tell me because she was afraid she was going to jinx it. So there were numerous times where I was still working on her energy, and she would. I think the first couple times it stopped, but then it would restart a few days later. And so at some point I said, okay, how's the pain? And she very reluctantly went, I haven't been in pain in like a week.
Wow, incredible. We've got a couple questions real quick. Glenn is asking, is Kundalini like chi? Not that I understand that either. I get you, Glenn.
It's probably related, yeah.
Yeah.
I
Right.
mean,
And it's
any of
al-
those energy systems are probably different words for this,
And that's it. I think that's been the confusing thing. And Steve and I have been touching on this lately. We do the Monday Madness show, and you never know what's going to come up at anything. And it usually trails off into something else. And we were hitting one last week that we were really trying to get into. We were talking about Philadelphia experiment. We were talking about the possibility of Bigfoot and other cryptids having that ability to manipulate, like think beam me up, Scotty, that kind of thing.
right?
And why not? What do we know? And
Well, that's it.
that's one of the things. I mean, right here in the book, we put in. I had to put in the part dedicated this to Seriah, and my computer hates his name, by the way. And no, it's not misspelled. I know how to spell it by now, And you keep telling the computer, no, no, no. But boy, I had to correct that every time, did we, Steve? No, it's spelled correctly.
It likes to correct it to cereal.
Yes, it's funny. But that was the thing we were talking about. How we only have so many pieces to the puzzle. We each maybe have one or two pieces.
Yeah.
And we don't have the cover to the box, nor do we know how many pieces there are to the puzzle, or
Yeah.
do we really know what we have. And that's just a great way of looking at everything, because it doesn't. Coloring outside the lines doesn't mean you don't have the correct picture. It just means you have a better picture or a different picture the way you see it. Your consciousness sees it. And what your consciousness, I think this is important, is ready to see, along your journey. And
Yeah.
Native Americans have that. It's like you might not be ready yet. You have to go through things to see it, What do you think about that?
Well, our brains are filters, first of all. Right off the bat, 90 to 95% of what you actually perceive you're not informed of it. The brain doesn't feel it's important, so it just kind of filters it out. And that's, I always go back to, there's a book called The Invisible Gorilla. It was at one point a viral video where a gorilla would come out dancing in between these basketball players, but they would have, the idea was you were supposed to count how many times the basketball players passed the basketball. And so while this was happening, the guy in a gorilla suit would come out, do a little dance, and walk off the screen. And 50% of the people watching that video did not see a gorilla because they were focused on the passing. And that's how, and the whole book illustrates all these different ways that, where we have this illusion that we're seeing everything that's going on, but we're only seeing what we're focused on most of the time. And our memory too works in a combination. The things we remember are made up of what actually happened, how we interpreted what's happened, and our point of view. Not to mention that memory immediately starts to become fallible as soon as you formed a memory. So they went back to big things like 9/11, where people are like, no, I know exactly what happened on 9/11, and they went into this classroom where a video camera happened to be running when it all happened, and they had people give their memories of what happened that day. And then they went back to the video and they looked, and nobody was right.
Incredible.
Like, some people were close, but
Right.
nobody was 100% right in their memories of this, despite it being a very clear and substantial memory.
Amazing. And I think we've all experienced that, trying to describe somebody and said, okay, well, she was wearing a blue shirt. And in your mind, you're 100% sure it was
Yeah.
a blue shirt. And
Yeah.
you go back and it was hot pink, not even close.
Right.
I mean, that just happened to me not long ago. And I actually stood there and thought about witness statements. My mind went back to 12 Angry Men and all the reasons that the people had to be there. The older lady who felt important and, you know, for a moment, and she got her hair done and she took her glasses off, and that's how the guy knew, because she had the little pinch thing on her nose, and she, you know, he was able to figure all this out by looking at each of the people. We are all individuals, and
Yes.
I think we take it for granted that all our eyes see the same thing, all our thoughts perceive what just went down the same way. And I think it might be a time to kind of tap the brakes and think about that, because, you know, even though I'm 100% sure of an experience I had and hung on to it so tightly, because, you know, in my lifetime, in my family dispersed very quickly. So a moment that my dad picked me up to save me from a dog or something like that was a moment of love for me, and I hung on to that. I could smell it, I could feel it. And, you know, that's something that I'd be hard pressed to be convinced that it didn't happen that way.
Sure.
But
Sure.
things in the background may have been different, or
Right.
my mind would fill it in. And I wonder how much of that is going on, especially in high adrenaline moments, like an experience like a UFO incident
Yes.
or a cryptid
Oh, yeah.
sighting. And, you know, that kind of thing. It's really something to consider, and it makes you take moments, I think, a little slower. You know, maybe not be quick to judge, you know, on stuff like that, because it is our perception, and there's so many different perceptions that are just as important.
Well, nobody has the same life experience either.
Correct.
So, and that, and even twins don't have the same life experience. And life experience, it is what you use to interpret going forwards. So your emotional responses to things and how you project onto those things are based mostly on your life experience. So if you're used to being, you know, treated badly, even in a situation where you're being treated okay, you might still might kind of lean toward, are they treating me badly? Because everyone treats me badly. And, you know, it colors everything. And if you feel, you know, if something feels scary, you're going to project fear into that situation as well. So something that may not be harmful at all may appear scary. I mean, how many times have people been utterly terrified of spiders that are completely harmless? But it doesn't make them feel like, oh, that spider's harmless, even if you tell them, because they're projecting their fear onto it.
That's a good concept. You know, I mean, what do you think about that, Steve?
Yeah, absolutely. Or you see something that's not what you perceive it to be at first, and it scares you. I've jumped at my own shadow before. I've been doing something. If I'd moved my lights around and wasn't expecting it, like,
Yep.
you know, what was that? And then you go back and try to do it again. Oh, it's my shadow. I can see it, you know, on the
Oh, that was me.
wall.
Absolutely.
And
We're
I think with
working
some,
on the echo, guys. I'm sorry, Seriah. We're working on the echo. I'm not sure. I don't think it's anything on my side. Nothing. I haven't changed any of my settings. It might be coming from Seriah.
it
If he's
shouldn't
hearing,
be, but
are you getting? Is that better, guys?
I only hear it on Cisco, so I don't know.
You only hear it on me. Maybe if I shut my mic off when you guys are talking, it won't. We'll try that. But either way, I promise you this conversation is going to be worth trying to get through. So if there's some
But
tech
this
issues,
is not unusual for us to have audio problems.
that's
When
true.
we're on with Seriah.
A lot
I
of
remember one
energy.
night Cisco and I were on with you. It was a pre-recorded show, and you lost control of like everything, and you just let it run.
oh yeah,
And
yeah.
we talked for like 3 hours, and they're like, "Seriah, are you there? Are you awake? You could hear us,
Broke
but
the
we couldn't
internet.
hear you."
We broke the internet, I think, yeah, but we were having a good old time talking. That
Well,
was the thing.
It was still recording, and that was the thing. So I'm like, I can't interact with them, but it's recording. So I'll just let it go.
And we're just like, oh, he'll come back. You remember that time, Steve? I mean, that's just it. I just think it's a wonderful, wonderful subject, and I can hear the echo too, guys. And it is when I'm talking, but I think it's coming out of yours, right? I'm not 100% sure. It might be. Like if you had earbuds, you don't have your headphones.
Do not.
Okay, we don't have them, guys, so we're just gonna have to work through it, and I'll just maybe talk slower so it doesn't echo.
I'm not hearing an echo. That's weird.
Yeah, I can hear it come back through me, and I think that's probably what it is. For some reason, the way my set is, if you're not wearing headphones, it's going to come back and come back through. And I don't know how to fix it. If I start twitching buttons and stuff, I might lose y'all.
If it's on Seriah, he can go into the screen there and go to settings, audio, and make sure echo cancellation's turned on.
Let me do that. It's on the other side of the room. I'll be right back.
Take your time, love. And they're saying they just hear it when I'm talking.
Yeah,
I think that's what it is. I mean, I've had other guests and I've got a hair stuck in my. So I'm going to take this time.
I hate that.
Just talk amongst yourselves. But it's there, and I can. Okay, yeah, because I haven't changed anything on mine. It should be cool, but that's probably what it is. Now he must have flipped the switch because I don't hear it anymore.
Is that any better?
I'm not hearing it anymore when I speak.
No, I don't hear it.
How about you guys? Are we 5-5 over there? All my wonderful gatekeepers. These are absolutely wonderful people, and I know they're going to throw a lot of questions at you. And the thing is, I didn't make a lot of notes for tonight because I know this conversation is going to go back and forth, and I just kind of wanted to leave it to the universe, as far as you got us all together.
Sure.
Is there anything anybody needs to hear or comes to your mind? Let's just talk about it. It's great. But definitely the one thing I wanted to get out a chance to talk about, so we might as well just throw it in now so I don't forget, is Camellia. Because when I heard your interview with Robert Guthrie, I was floored. I just had to sit on the floor and I just listened. And anytime I ever talk about individual targeting, people, maybe less fortunate indigent people on the streets being picked up, maybe being experimented with, stuff like that. We don't like to think that these things go on people, but, you got to get out of that normalcy of thought. And we also need to stop thinking that everybody is like, us, where we wouldn't want to harm someone or we wouldn't want to do anything. You got to get out of that because so many people are, and they're, whether it's science or, psychological, whatever it may be, psychopaths. I mean, people are different and these things do happen. But Robert Guthrie wrote a book, several, and when you had him on, I sent everybody that. I said, if you want to hear about it, you've got to hear Seriah interview Robert Guthrie. And then you went and put them together.
Yes.
Which is fantastic. Tell us a little bit about that, and what did that open up for you, and how did you feel about that whole thing,
Well, first of all, it's a very well-written book. And it's easy to read it and think that, either he's making it up or his friend, who was, a drug addict and stuff, was making it up. But when you look around, you find that, some of the stuff they're talking about in there, especially now, 10 years later or so, we know this stuff exists. Some of the stuff has been coming out in scientific advancements. So it was around back then. If we're all finding out about it now, it was around back then. I've also learned since then that a lot of this stuff is done by corporate entities, not necessarily by the military. So either a corporation is working on something and silently experimenting on people, or it is being, it's a sort of a black project. The government's doesn't directly have its hands in it, but they're paying someone to do this research. So when they're dealing with these suits, these invisibility suits and things like that, I mean, that stuff is slowly coming out now. So when you're seeing these Glimmerman reports, you got to say, okay, is this a distortion from something paranormal, or is this an experiment from the military?
Absolutely.
Or some corporation. There was a guy in Buffalo who contacted me. He was a radio station DJ up there, and he was having this type of Camellia stuff happening to him, mostly with the Glimmerman type of things, and he tracked it to a corporation who, if I remember right, actually admitted that they were doing it.
Wow.
Wow.
Right?
Amazing.
Right. So now it's just like anything else. If you see a UFO, remember everybody was seeing the black triangle,
Yeah.
UFOs and things like that. You got to think, okay, is that us? Is it
Yes.
us because we reverse engineered something that that landed here or came through and we reverse engineered it? Is it them? What is it? And I think that's the whole thing about unidentified. But now we have to also do it with the humanoids being seen all over Chicago. Is that just, a different super soldier kind of thing?
Right.
Is it some kind of hybrid?
Yeah.
That was done here, and I don't think it mars, the whole paranormal supernatural, WTF community. I think it expands it even more. And if you just understand the keys, like you said, you hit it. If, I've heard from many military people, as you know, I'm ex-military, and I do a lot with vets and things like that. And anybody in the enforcement can tell you that if you understand that there are people that are in charge of putting out movies and allowing us to see, then they've had it 10, 15 years.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Easily.
You see, there's a new one out that I'm very interested in right now. It's called Moonfall, which is just wide open, crazy. And we'll get into that. But I did make a little video because I don't know if everybody has seen this. So I put a couple little quick clips in there. It's only about a minute and a half. But if you've never seen some of these things like cloaking, like you saw the Harry Potter with the invisible cloak of invisibility,
Right.
or if you didn't get to see some of the videos and stuff that we were, when we hit Desert Storm and the whole thing, all that, the war over there for so many years, we had the adage of soldiers having cameras and a lot of different CCT cameras picking up stuff. So I've got a couple little things just to show you guys. And like I said, it's about a minute and a half, maybe 2 minutes tops. So if anybody needs to run and get a drink or something, you can. But here we go. Let's take a look. Start that again. I'm sorry, guys. Tech. Where's my producer?
そのため背景に溶け込んで見えなくなるというものです。また最近ペンタゴンがこのテクノロジーを軍の兵士に応用した新兵器を発表しています。それもやはり背中につけたカメラで背景を撮影し、それを表側のセンサーに映し出すため、兵士がバックの風景に溶け込んでしまい見えなくなるという驚異的な装備なのです。
確かにみるみるうちに姿が消えてしまう。まるで透明人間のように兵士の姿はほとんど見えない。我々の知らないところでこのような驚くべきテクノロジーが進んでいる証拠と言えるだろうか。スイッチを切ると
Incredible, huh?
I didn't understand a word of it.
Me either. Don't ask me to translate. Donnie? He's our translator.
Of course, how much of this stuff is CGI too? Because
Exactly. Is it?
Like that looks like a green screen. That looks like he's
Yes.
just using a blue blanket right there.
Mm-hmm. It does. And we get into the soldier aspect. And again, you can look at the film and say, is it a glitch? Now there's a lot of them out there. This is one. There's a lot of different films out there. And I'd like to thank Bizarre Bin on YouTube for some of the clips here.
And what's happening here? Because I'm not...
Okay, this is in reverse. Here he comes. Watch the red circle. And then he disappears about halfway across. See? Now again, is it a glitch?
Yeah, it's hard to say.
It is.
Video
And
quality is very poor.
Yeah.
And then there's another one like that where a tank is coming through and you see a figure just sort of materialize as he comes across the screen, and then he goes and gets in the tank. So I think they have some
I
sort
have
of
no doubt
technology.
this technology exists.
Correct.
Whether that's an example of it or not, it's hard to say because, like I said, the video quality's so low that
Yes. Yep. And that's true. And we get that a lot with Bigfoot. But what if the quality on the Bigfoot videos is low because there's some kind of energy or, some kind of cloaking thing that they have that messes up the video?
so
I don't know.
one of the things I've been working on, which comes from listening to an episode of the Brothers of the Serpent podcast when they had their friend Marty on, and he was talking about they did a whole thing on UFO history with him, which was very, very good. And he said at some point he was trying to take a picture of a military craft, and he could not get a clear photo of the thing. And he was like, "Why is this not coming out?" And then he realized that one of the things it does for stealth is it bathes the craft in ultraviolet light. Or infrared, or maybe infrared,
Yeah.
which is why a normal camera can't focus on it. And so he was like, oh, that's why I couldn't get a picture. So that got me to thinking John Keel would always talk about how this stuff seems to move in from the infrared spectrum. And I started looking into this more, and I'm wondering, well, if these things are, let's say, temporary artifacts in our reality, they may be coming in from another light form, whether it be infrared or something else. And that's why we can't get good footage of them, because it's actually interfering with the cameras. It's not that they have a cloaking device, but they're literally emitting a form of light that our cameras cannot actually capture. There are protests. Some of the stuff I found, there were protesters in Taiwan, and they would get caps. And on the top of the cap, they had infrared lights that shined out over their face. And that would blur any kind of facial recognition from normal cameras.
Absolutely. I've heard this. I thought that was amazing. You know?
And there was a guy, one of my Patreons, who wrote me and said he actually worked on this stuff for the military, and that they had beams of light they could shine at missiles that would completely destroy their cameras. So he's like, yes, this light can literally destroy equipment or severely disrupt it. So again, if we're looking at paranormal stuff coming in from another realm of emitting another form of energy, it could be here with us the whole time, but outside the realm of stuff we experience, and occasionally can force its way into our reality. It may be emitting weird radiation, weird light. You get people for everything from Bigfoot to UFO encounters who have weird ailments afterwards, including conjunctivitis, which you can get from certain forms of light.
Incredible.
So, to me, that's a good suggestion of why Bigfoot's always blurry, because the camera can't focus on it.
Comedian Mitch Hedberg once said that Bigfoot, all the pictures are blurry because Bigfoot is blurry. So it's actually a clear picture of a blurry thing. And that would make sense. If it's vibrating at a different frequency or something, it's always going to be blurry. That's why there's no clear picture one. That makes perfect sense, even if it came out of a joke.
And Keith what's his last name? Linder. Keith Linder. He had the Seattle Demon House that they featured on Ghost Adventures.
Keith.
When Steve Mira was setting up the cameras there, first of all, they were getting such clear EVPs that it sounded like there were a bunch of people in the room, like just talking. And at one point, they turned on the infrared on one of the cameras, and one of the voices said, "Ooh, we don't like that."
Wow.
And I thought, well, if these things exist in an infrared realm, maybe that's like, looking at the sun to them.
Could be. And looking up all these invisible, little clips and stuff, I came across, of course, all the things that can camouflage out of nature.
Oh yeah,
I mean, that's
absolutely.
just amazing. And under the sea especially, and you've got your chameleons, which is where the whole cameleo comes from. And I believe cameleo was the name of the military project, was it not? That was going on in the Robert Guthrie thing. I think that's what he said.
No, I don't know if they ever had the name of the project.
Oh, okay. And with that whole thing, that got me was the invisible midgets, the smaller people that were pushing him and irritating him. I guess the whole idea of it, the basic story was that The man wasn't homeless, but he was definitely an addict. He was selling drugs, and he admitted it, and there was no problem about it. And Robert Guthrie had known him for a long time, I think since he was like 16. So
Right.
he found himself in a situation where he was in California, San Diego, I believe. And of course, he had this party house kind, and this guy came along, Lee, I believe he said his name was, and he needed a place to crash. Sure, you can crash on my couch. Well, the short end of this was that the guy was AWOL. He had left Camp Pendleton with, I think, 23 to 25 night vision goggles.
Yeah.
A Ruger, I believe it was taken off a dead Iraqi or something like that, and a laptop that belonged to the DOD. Not the smartest guy, not the brightest crown in the box. And he happens to open this laptop one day, and this gentleman saw the DOD logo come up and said, "These people are going to track you." And the guy laughed and said, "They can't do that." Minutes later, knock at the door. Here comes a card-carrying lady with a couple of obvious kind of men in black looking kind of guys. And it was over. And then the harassment started. They thought that, everybody threw the drugs on the floor, went out the back. I think he said something about, well, do you have a warrant? Come back and grab him a couple of minutes anyway. And everybody left him standing there. They think that he knows where these goggles are. And that's what happens. They keep harassing him, trying to break him down mentally, basically physically, and just kept harassing him. And, some of these things, the thing on the beach where you could see the tracks and hear the probably the RV or whatever coming, but couldn't see it.
Yeah.
Invisible people hitting him, all kinds of weird shadow play on the walls, like a hand with a gun pointing at him. People the creepiest out of all that were the people walking behind him, talking to him, trying to make him crazy, telling private details about him and stuff.
The gang stalking and stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that whole thing is just an amazing book. I highly recommend it. But if you really want to get the big juice of it, drop the link again, Mods. I know I saw it go through here once to Where Did the Road Go and the Camilio interview. Fantastic. And all the interviews on there are just fantastic. You're really going to get so many different looks of this. But, getting all of that out of it kind of opened for me stuff I had heard in the military, the connections, and I think it's the same in the military and the government and everything else, and the people that try to compartmentalize all these things and say they don't have a relation to the other. Like Bigfoot can't be related to UFOs, and ghosts or whatever, aren't related to this. And it's just to keep us from understanding it all and putting together that we're all connected and the energy is all connected, and why can't these things be connected, like the Philadelphia experiment and so many other things that are going on now. So what did that open up for you? I mean, I'm sure you weren't surprised by the gang stalking or the equipment or the ability.
I don't think I was surprised by any of it. And I'm sure the military and corporate entities out there have technology way beyond anything we can even imagine at this point. Things we haven't even thought of. So I don't think it really opened anything from it. I really enjoyed the interview in the book. I thought it was fascinating, but I don't know if it really changed the way I saw anything.
That's interesting, because to me, I started looking at, because, gosh, when was that? When was the book? Around 14, 13, something? Was it
Something
earlier
like
than that?
I think.
As early. I know that the interview was early. And I started thinking about, okay, my God, this is all connected. And they are, it made me think more about indigent people on the streets and things that are happening, because I was hearing stuff there that people would just go missing, but they're homeless or they're addicts or they're alcoholics, so nobody pays attention.
Yeah,
And,
exactly. That's why serial killers a lot of times will choose, homeless people, prostitutes, people that won't be missed easily, the disenfranchised, the ones that literally have no voice. And that's the scary part. And the thing about the midgets, the little people, that makes perfect sense. I mean, if you're cloaking them, that's a smaller thing you have to cloak. Plus, it can get in and out of places easier through smaller openings and whatnot. And the experience that I had in downtown Portland late one night, what I saw was only about 4 feet tall. but it looked like that had that shimmer to it. Looked like heat coming off the pavement, but it was chilly out, and it just kind of squatted down behind the garbage can there, between the garbage can and street post.
That's so
And it
creepy,
was
though.
humanoid in shape, but very small in stature.
Right, right. But it is terrifying to, if you don't understand that, look, once you get past the Tuskegee Airmen and all this other stuff, that the military definitely, they're going to experiment, they're going to do things for the greater good. That's, what they say. Or, national security or whatever that is. It's kind of this blanket statement that, makes an exception for all behavior that's just horrifying to the normal person that we would never do. Again, like I said in the beginning, kind of get out of that box of normalcy and what you would do and not assume that other people are going to be like you, because there's just some true evil out there that we would see it, we could go through history, it goes back for millennia, the different things that are done. But to understand some of the things right now, like the gang stalking, or, just going through and destroying somebody's life, or, there's people out there that are talking about the sound weaponry and things like this that they're using to terrorize people. And I just hope they never focus on me. That's
really.
just, you think you're having a bad day. Add invisible midgets, people standing behind you talking about you, and then you leave, you get on the bus, and two other people are saying the same things that they're saying, and you're thinking you're going crazy, and nobody's believing you because you're an addict, or you're an alcoholic, or you're homeless, and, what do you know? They don't even want to talk to you if you're, it's uncomfortable. So nobody's going to believe you. And it just, it really makes you think, like you said, Seriah, I don't think it surprised me. I think it did make me start thinking about the whole compartmentalized thing. It's like they're trying to keep us from something. We did another thing a couple weeks ago in Bermuda Triangle, and, why are people getting shot because they're listening to, and so many have, not as many as, like, say, JFK, but people investigating people, witness statements from the Bermuda Triangle, and the guy got shot back in the head.
Somebody wants certain things to stay secret. I read not too long ago about somebody was investigating the Lincoln assassination, and they started getting death threats and things. Now, that's like 200 years ago or something almost. That's a deep, dark secret if somebody's willing to give you death threats over something that you're looking into that happened that long ago.
At the same time, if you want people to think they're on the right track, that's also the thing you want to do. You want to make it look like you're trying to hide something, because that's not the direction you're hiding something in.
It's like throw in bits of truth with all the lies and just shake it all up.
Little red herring.
And that's how they did the whole, the JFK thing. There was so much, and they just said, just absolutely bombard it with information, and people will just absolutely stop, because it's just too much. And even to this day, you have people that are absolutely on the right track, but they're after that one person. So they get all the information that points to that one person, and then they sit on that and say, no, it has to be this one. And this person will do, you've interviewed him, I've interviewed him, Steve's talked to him, and no, this person, but hold on, back up. It's all of them. It's like they all had a piece, or part of it. And I think, go ahead.
Oh, so Camellia was published in 2015.
Okay.
And I had him on in 2018. Doesn't seem like it was that recently, but I guess it's 5 years ago now.
Yeah. I thought it would have been longer than that, too. There you go.
Me too.
Mandela effect.
Yeah. And it's like we said in Predator, that was 87.
Yeah.
So they're showing you that, which is why I've looked at movies different kind of ever since, because I'm thinking, okay, what are they telling us they got now?
Conditional programming, getting you used to the idea of something, just kind of ease you into it.
That, and you also got to figure that sci-fi has always kind of been ahead of the curve on technology. How much stuff from Star Trek did the military look at and go, actually, Can
Yeah.
we do that?
Yeah.
We can do that. That'd be a good idea. And then you look back at somebody like H.G. Wells that
Right.
wrote about all this stuff in the 1800s, early 1900s that came to be true. And people thought, this man's a lunatic. Where does he get these stories? I wonder if he wasn't a time traveler and he just went back and was writing out stuff that was going to happen. And so it would seem fantastical. I mean, the space travel and just a lot of technologies and things that we have just recently. He was writing about it years and years ago.
Yep. And then, like I said, too, it's 63. And, people will say, okay, well, the mafia wanted him because of this, or this, is people after his not Prescott Bush, I'm sorry, the dad, the father of it all, stuff he did. And again, you can pick out all those different things. But again, if you look back, a lot of people were involved in that. When you get money and the decisions and the higher, the one percenters and all that stuff, it gets a little mucky. And I think that's the whole thing where conspiracy theory came from, a CIA word to just make a conspiracy. It doesn't even make sense. Is it a theory about a conspiracy? No, it's a conspiracy that we're talking about, and there's facts. And how many conspiracies are starting to link together if you really look at it? We're just now looking at, I've got people, my boss asked me the other day, what's this Titanic stuff? What was there something going on there? And I, well, there's some facts that say, and I started talking about Jekyll Island and things like that, and JP Morgan's, all this, his luggage is on there, and the last minute he's turned away and just, like that. Yeah, I'm not getting on that ship. And the people that went down. Now, is it possible? Absolutely. Is the Lusitania possible? And we start seeing all these documents. You go, oh, wait a minute, that tinfoil hat's turning into a tinfoil crown, mother.
Yeah.
It's like.
What was the Titanic thing? That it was actually another ship that they had renamed after another ship because of some kind of insurance scam or something like that. There was, I'd have to find.
Well, there was a system. That one, I'm no expert on it, but it was supposedly that one was going to be decommissioned. They flipped it, and it was meant to happen because there was supposedly bankers that didn't want the Federal Reserve. They were going to vote against it, and that was it. They went down. J.P. Morgan changed his mind. He didn't take the ship, and then Jekyll Island happened a couple days later, where everybody decided where our money was going to go. And that's kind of the way things go. That's the theory anyway. I know people that could go a lot deeper. What do you think, Seriah?
So as far as the Titanic, I don't know enough about it to even comment on it. As far as JFK, the official version of what happened with JFK simply doesn't fit the facts. Yeah. I mean, they're flat out lying. And the thing is, the fact that they got away with it showed them that they could blatantly lie to the public and do whatever they wanted, and that haven't stopped since. Now, who they are is hard to necessarily place, and I think the Bush family is definitely, especially Senior there, has been a big part of that until he died, obviously.
Yeah.
Maybe he's not dead. Maybe he's still alive somewhere because they have life-extending technology, and he would be one of the people they could give it to.
He's in the bunker.
And he was there in Dallas, by the way, that day.
Huh?
He was there in Dallas.
He was in Dallas that morning. That was who wrote the book on that? The Bush Family Secrets. I had him on early on. It's the guy that does whowhatwhy.com. But he heard an interview with Bush where someone asked him where he was when Kennedy was shot, and he said he didn't remember. So
only person in America, by the way.
Right. And so he was like, you don't remember? What the hell? And so he started looking up the information, found out that he was in Dallas that morning with another number of other important people, and then made sure he was at a conference a short distance away speaking when Kennedy was shot. So they came up and told him the president had been shot, and he very calmly apparently just said, well, I've just been given word that the president's been shot. I'm just going to conclude my speech. And he just went and sat down. Not shocked, and then he placed weird phone calls to the Secret Service or to the whoever was investigating, trying to indict other, saying, oh, I think this person was behind it, or I think this person was behind it. And it's just weird, like stuff that didn't make sense.
So much. So much. One of my very favorite, Jim Mars, and I got to speak to him probably within months before he died. I mean, I just, it was an amazing conversation, and he was actually going to college there. He was in Dallas. He was going to college, and he was actually at Jack Ruby's dancing with one of the strippers the night before. Had his picture taken with her, and I mean, he knew them. He was a cub reporter, is basically what they called it back then, and that's when I believe journalism, they really tried to get after the facts and really tried to prove and have their sources. And there was all that honor about I won't give up my sources kind of thing. We hear many of that. They go to jail for it and stuff.
Yep.
There was a lot of honor there. And I think that's one of the things that really bugged him as he saw the death of journalism. I wish he could be around when he sees a lot of the other young journalists coming up and doing YouTube channels and things like that try to have to really reinforce their facts like tenfold before they'll come out and say it and have honor and say, I got it wrong. Let's fix this. And it's so refreshing to see, but I think all of that started to happen with JFK. I mean, it's wonderful to have podcasts like that and have people on like Mark Shaw. He kind of went after the JFK through the back door with Dorothy Kilgallen. And then you start putting conversations that we're having with other people that go, wait a minute, Jim Mars used to talk a lot about Dorothy Kilgallen because of her journalism techniques and, how she wouldn't give up information and sources and hang in there. And then you get a little bit more of the information via the Jack Ruby end and, New Orleans and things.
Right.
So it's amazing. I just wish everybody could get in the same room that wrote these wonderful books and did all this wonderful research and go, you know what? A lot of those pieces, like you talked about the puzzle, we really have more of the puzzle than we think if we could just stop compartmentalizing it again, like and having those back and forth fights, because I think a lot of those things are true. And of course, Bush wound up being the head of the CIA not long after that. And when you watch how those people moved into positions, Well,
even Reagan, they didn't want Reagan as the presidential candidate. And Reagan was very much against the secret societies and stuff like this. And one day he kind of shut up about all that and took Bush as his vice president. And then, of course, they attempted to assassinate him. Now, whether that was convenient, or if that was planned because they knew Bush wouldn't win, but they wanted Bush as the president.
Yeah. One of the most interesting things, too, is some of the people, I love going back and getting some of the old interviews. I mean, really, some of these deep, grainy, 16 millimeter, whatever, old, almost sepia looking things. And the conversations with the people at the time compared to now. The man who jumped on his two kids and held his wife down, who heard, 3 shots coming from this direction that was just wiped out of, all of the film confiscation, the Zapruder film with its missing frames that was obviously messed with and, stuff like that. But like you said, they did it, in noon, in the middle of the afternoon in front of everybody in Dallas. And I don't think we've been the same because they learned that they could lie to us and just throw enough garbage out there and people will buy it.
There's I just played this week on The Last Exit. There's a band called Ramallah. They have a song called Drink the Kool-Aid, and one of the lines is if they killed JFK, imagine what they'll do to you and me.
Yeah, exactly. And again, I said this to Jim Mars. I said, he wasn't my favorite guy. I certainly wouldn't want him as a husband. You got to look at the way he came through. He was a womanizing, son of a gun. But, you have to think, too. Jackie knew, her mom knew when her dad was, doing it to her mom. I mean, it was just these different people. He was a real loose cannon. I had heard he ran off and almost married a woman, or did marry her, and they had to annul it. I mean, he was always trying to run off in different directions. One of the saddest things is right there in the pool at the White House. Jackie's coming in. The Secret Service, of course, is covering for him. They get him out of the pool with the 2 babes he had in the pool with him, and she goes to try to go behind him, and she can see the little footprints next to his, the wet footprints in the pool. I mean, she wrote about this stuff, so if we could move all past that, he wasn't a perfect guy, but he didn't want to do Operation Northwoods. We don't do that, is what I heard he said. And that was from Jim Mars. And, we talked about that a little bit because so many don't hesitate. There's so many things that have been done,
Yeah.
And
Guys, I'll be right back.
go ahead, Steve. And I think that was the one thing. I really think the poor man thought he was president, and when he wanted to split up the CIA, and he did the things to Dulles, and of course that was it. And let me tell you something. The people that they have airports named after, and towns, and all these big wonderful things. Most of these people are absolute human shit. I mean, that's just as honest as I can be. Because if you look back and you start digging on these people that we've held up as heroes, and you can...
Oh, yeah.
We got to stop making, these people famous. Look into people.
The winners write the history books. So, of
Yes.
course, the winners are the heroes.
Yes. And
Unfortunately, we've now replaced that also with mindless celebrities.
Absolutely. The stupid people were making famous, and you wonder. I mean, I remember, I could go back, further than you, Seriah, when somebody got on the Wheaties box, an athlete or something like that. We used to go, whoa, that's something if an athlete endorsed something. But I can also remember a little movie, and I think it was No Time for Sergeants. I believe it was, oh gosh, what's his name? Played, Opie's dad. Oh, I can't even think of his name now. But anyway, he played the lead, and he was playing this hick that just wound up in the army, and he was trying to get along, and he was playing that old Southern boy, but it was supposed to mean that he looked like he was ignorant, but he wasn't. He was smarter than everybody, and he was just very polite, and he had a lot of, his moral compass was very strong, and he just said, I can't say I like this cereal and I eat it every morning because I don't. Andy Griffith, thank you.
Yes.
And I have a fantastic chat. And it hit me so much as a kid. Unfortunately, my mom was a single mom, and, it was latchkey kids before we knew what that was. You came home from school and you got your butt in the house and you stayed there if that's what you were told to do. And some of us were raised by the TV in some ways, but we had different shows back then too. I was lucky enough to have things like Andy Griffith and, a couple of other things like that had like the story and a moral.
Right.
Opie shot the baby, the mama bird, just to see his BB gun work, but his dad made him listen to the baby birds that were crying and were going to die because he did that uselessly, and I was like, oh my gosh, it hit me. I never forgot it. So little things like that. I can't say I eat it every morning because I don't. I think we still have that in our moral compass, and just some of these people just don't. It's like we said, the greater good, or for science or whatever.
Yeah.
To take a man like Tesla, and the man winds up poor, destitute, in somebody that should have everything and wanted to give so much to people, and just for the sheer discovery and everything of it.
But they couldn't make money off of that.
No, they couldn't. And the same with herbal stuff. Now, you and I, we know darn good and well that, there's plenty of herbal cures out there, and natural remedies and things like that go back to any culture that has dealt, in
Sure.
any continent, you know what I mean? And they can't make money off of it. So they'll take something like white willow bark and add a bunch of stuff to it, change it every once in a while to get the patent redone. And white willow bark is the active ingredients in your aspirin.
The whole part of the argument against medical marijuana and stuff is that they couldn't, the drug companies couldn't take something that was natural and patent it. So they were trying to make synthetic marijuana that would do the same thing. And of course it wasn't helpful.
Yeah.
It actually wasn't doing anything good for anyone. But they could patent that. So that's what they wanted to push.
Incredible. And I found that out being an herbalist. You have to look at things like when darn well that if you use organic garlic and you use it correctly and you know how to chop it, and you chop it, you wait 7 minutes and then you chop it again, because the healing power is actually doubled, and of course you start out with organic stuff, not something that's been processed and everything else, and it will actually help in many, many things. Raw garlic is amazing. Look it up, you'll see. It's just the list goes on and on. But then you see, when that word starts getting out, you see some pharmaceutical company or another company that's trying to sell you a pill that says clinical studies have shown. And that's all we need to hear, to go, okay, it doesn't work. It doesn't, heal this, or it doesn't do that, or it doesn't lower blood pressure. And I'm like, wait, stop. Who did the clinical study? What country? Yeah. How did they do it? What did they use? Because, people that use that, and any herbalist will tell you, you can harness the bullet, but you can't harness the magic. It's Mother Nature's kitchen only. And there was a wonderful movie out about that. It was called Medicine Man with Sean Connery. And they based this whole thing on an herb that the village, the tribe that had been basically shut off from civilization for so long, had used it for so many things, and he found that it cured cancer, but he couldn't replicate it because everything got destroyed. And because he came there, he brought disease. So you had the medicine man said, no more, you can't come in, that kind of thing. The whole thing killed a lot of Native Americans too.
Right.
And he couldn't replicate it. Well, he kept looking and trying to get it, but he found out this one pile where this vine grew actually had red ants next to it. So it was the combination of the anthill and what they did, and the vine grew from that. So in some cases, you need the way Mother Nature did it. And the minute you start altering that, it doesn't work anymore. So I think that's the problem with a lot of the pharmaceuticals. There's a lot of wonderful Western medicine out there. If I ever lose an arm, I'm going straight down there. You can sew it back on, but I'm going home to cure the pain and take care of the the rest of it. But so I don't want to bash that, but it's what they do, and I think they're doing with everything, Seriah. Some people believe in ghosts. Some people think it's our mind, what we want to see. We're manifesting it, And so many things are hard to prove because, like you said earlier, the video's so grainy. The picture's grainy. Yeah. Your what's it called when you pareidolia? You're fitting it, and you said that in the beginning. Your mind will fill it in. Yeah. And if that's true, what about manifesting your own reality?
Oh, I think I think there's definitely some manifestation of reality that we're behind, and we don't know it. We're not doing it consciously. The closest we can come is doing magical rituals and things like that. But there's a consensus reality we all share as well. So I think that there's certain things we can tweak, and certain things we can't. Things we're meant maybe to tweak. That's part of our path. That we're supposed to learn to do this stuff. But we can't just become a millionaire tomorrow. Or someone would have done it, and been like, "Hey, guess what? You could just do this."
Yeah. But I think also, it could mean as little as just how you make it. Like we hear all these little motivational things like, fake it till you make it, or, glass is half full, half empty is how you look at it, being an optimist or a pessimist. You said it earlier, touched on it with, are these people treating me badly? Everybody treats me badly. I know people that the minute you say something to them, they say, I can't. All right, to me, and I say it this way, it's almost a self-curse because you've already stopped yourself before you've begun. So manifesting to me could very well be just that. It's how you look at things, how you perceive things, how you, I was always told you can't control other people, only how you react to it.
Yes.
So I think in a small way that could almost be manifesting reality. And I think there's also something bigger. I heard a very interesting theory about how your consciousness could be so much, your higher consciousness. You have somebody just say you're in the fourth or whatever dimension consciously. whatever that means. You could explain it better than I. And you have somebody else that's not. They're like a sleepwalker, or they're in the third, and you're together, but you're in the same place. But it's almost like this guy is weaving in and out of a parallel universe. What do you think about that?
Well, I think there's a lot of different states of consciousness, most of which we're not aware of. I think it was Colin Wilson nicknamed it the robot, which is the part of our consciousness that does all the stuff that we've learned to do, like driving a car. We don't get to a car after we've learned to drive and think about what you're doing most of the time. You just go. It's riding a bike. It doesn't matter what it is. Our body knows what to do. We do not have to apply very much conscious effort. I mean, how many times have people driven home from like work or something, and they get home and go, I don't even remember driving home.
Yes.
Because the robot keeps up. And the robot is very capable. And the only time the robot will alert you is when, something changes. Something runs out in front of the car, and suddenly you're like, whoa. And then you're thinking, I don't really remember much of the drive. I mean, and it doesn't happen every time you drive, but the robot takes so much of part of your life. And it's just like an autonomous system that's not just keeping, your body running, but also just doing all the normal things you do. And one of the things I think about when I get into that is that as we get older, people always say, oh, time passes faster. And I don't think time passes faster. I think it's that we're doing so much of the same stuff. It's just not memorable. So I record stuff for every single day. And when I look back, I'm thinking, I don't remember any of this stuff. Like if you asked me, I would have said that thing that happened a year ago happened 6 months ago. Because there's all this very mundane stuff, and all that mundane stuff doesn't create really important memories. So once things stop being constantly new, as a child, everything is new.
So true.
And even as a teen, getting into your teens and early 20s, you're having constant new experiences, and you hit a point where you're not getting those constant new experiences. So your brain, it's not that time seems like it's moving faster, it's that you're not remembering as much of what happened. You're not as fully conscious as some of those events, because the robot's taking over more and more. And, we don't realize it because we're only conscious of the thing we're conscious of at any given time. We don't know what else there is. I mean, we know there's a subconscious layer. I mean, you look at dreams, and there's so many different types of dreams, but even if you take the sort of subconscious dump type of dream, you're not creating that in a sense. Like your conscious mind is not creating that dream. There's some other part of you that is creating this dream and this sometimes very thick dream world. And you have no say in that. And that's, when you look at poltergeist activity and stuff like that, it's kind of the same thing. If it's coming from you, it's coming from a part of you you have no direct knowledge of. So you're kind of just going, oh, it's a ghost. Well, maybe it is. Maybe it's a ghost using your PK energy. But at the same time, you have no control over it. You almost, even if you know it's you, okay, you're getting stressed out and suddenly you're getting poltergeist activity. Okay, well, that's me. But I'm not doing it, so I have to treat it like it's an external entity because I have no control over it. But yet it's still a part of you. And so where do those things, how many more parts of us are there out there that we know nothing about, that we're completely unaware of? And where does that boundary end?
We have no clue. And like we said, if we're energy, or mostly energy, and everything else is energy, when you were talking about the Kundalini and how you moved it, I've done the same thing by reading energy. I have to put I couldn't describe it if you held a gun to my head, but I know what I have to do to get to the point where I'm out of my own head and I'm just I look at it as my ancestors behind me doing it. Because if I think I'm doing it, I'll just muck it up. So I just you're just using me, whatever you got to do to make it work, right? Just tell me, and I can feel a difference, and I'm like, okay, you're having a problem with your knee. And then I try to look at, and I don't know what you call this. I've seen other people do it and they have wonderful names for it. I just do it when I'm called to do it, and the person allows me, wants you to, they open their energy. You can't just walk up to somebody who's blocked and start getting stuff.
Nope,
it's
not
different.
at all.
Steve and I had a wonderful thing with that, and that was Cool Breeze. Steve, when we're trying to figure out what's going on. Everybody is involved, people in different states. It was absolutely an amazing thing, but I had to get Steve's permission. I've never done this before, by the way, to almost carry his energy. She goes through me to get his, because he gave me permission to bring it to her so she could read what was going on. And it happened instantly. As soon as I said, he's given his permission for you to look into this, because he was having the experience. And she just bam, 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 she just got it. It's an amazing thing. And I think if he had been closed off, they wouldn't have been able to pull it, because Cool Breeze was closed off and she could only read him through you. It's an amazing thing. It was almost like an experiment we didn't know we were doing.
Yeah.
So earlier, when you were talking about the gang stalking and people talking about someone as they walk by, one of the people I've not directly worked with for the Kundalini, but definitely has Kundalini experience, is a friend of mine. And she has also been diagnosed with schizophrenia and seems to actually have schizophrenia. It seemed to happen when the Kundalini woke up. It blew out her crown chakra and led to some level of schizophrenia. But she's done a couple of very interesting things. One, she would hear voices in her head. Mm-hmm. And one day she turned on her tape recorder and recorded them. And I was like, okay, that's really, unfortunately, she doesn't have the tape, of course, because that's how that stuff works. Mm-hmm. But the thing that spoke to me about is that either A, she's hearing actual voices mm-hmm. that are somehow projecting onto the tape, like people think EVPs are, mm-hmm. Or she projected those voices onto the tape, and that makes you wonder about EVPs. Like, how many times do people get EVPs, but they're actually projecting from some part of us? Or a spirit is using us to project onto the tape, which to me makes more sense than a spirit from the 1800s knowing how to project onto a tape recorder. Mm-hmm. And you also find that ghost hunters will find you'll find them getting more and more EVPs the more research they do. More commonly, we'll get EVPs, and so you got to wonder, like, are they just getting better at projecting onto that recording device unintentionally? Mm-hmm. Unconsciously, or are they better at channeling that information from something?
Mm-hmm. The path is more well worn,
right?
Maybe, perhaps.
And there's also a guy I had on, Rick Wade, a few years back, and Rick said he could not only get tons of EVPs, but sometimes when he went back and listened to them, they were different.
Ooh!
And I was like, I think that's you. I think you're doing it, and you don't know you're doing it.
No.
And the other thing this girl experienced, which I found utterly fascinating, is one day she got onto a bus and she had a song in her head. And I guess it was a well-known song. And suddenly the people next to her both started humming it. And she got a little freaked out and she walked away from them and she got near someone else and they started humming it. Mm-hmm. And she was thinking this is her schizophrenia kicking in. And I'm thinking to myself, you're broadcasting. Mm-hmm. You don't even know you're doing it, and they don't know they're picking it up, but you're broadcasting.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I've done it at work to make people crazy or make them shut up. I've done it because you get so, when you have energy, you've said it too, Seriah, and multiple times, Steve, you said it, that you get that if it's energy, let's try to learn how to use it. Let's play around with it a little bit. And I know that you're big on that, Seriah. Let's see what works. So I'm thinking, I'm picking somebody who's basically what you would call like an energy vampire. So she's susceptible already. She's just pulling in. She doesn't care where she's getting it from. Doesn't even know she's doing it. She's just one of those people. And I'm thinking, okay, well, I'm going to put this out. And I did the thing with the phrase, you have to pee. You have to pee. You have to pee. Waterfall, faucet, water, 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 water. You have to pee. It took 20 minutes before she said, oh, that's it. I'm going to the bathroom. And she just got up and went into the bathroom. And I went, oh, my gosh. I wonder if I could do. You go to the bank. You want to give me $100. You really want to give me $100. You really want to give. But I think also, too, there's something. I know this sounds funny, but I think there's something behind. I've heard many a time with psychics, mediums, things like that. If you use it like that, you're going to lose it. Like they'll tell you, I can't give you the lottery numbers. I can't use it to I have to use it for good for other people. I can't really use it on myself or my family. I think that's the emotional aspect in it. I think
Maybe.
that's an amazing thing to think about. Like, whatever's got this, I don't know if we're blocking it ourselves because of the emotion. You know what I mean? Like, I really want to help this person I care and love about, but they don't seem to be the ones who listen. But strangely enough, they don't seem to be the ones who listen about the herbs and stuff either. You know, this really hurts. I wish I could do something about it. I said, well, I know about 5 things that cost like $5 that you could give a whirl. No, no, no. Want to go to the doctor. You get the x-ray. It's exactly what we said it was. You come back and go, well, I got this prescription. So I'm good. But that's fine. That's your choice. That's your stuff. You have to do what you believe in, or chances are it's not going to work anyway.
Well, that's it. I was going to say it's a placebo effect in effect at all times as well. It's not that things don't work, because certainly, you know, you can give someone something, you know, you can slip someone a drug and it's still going to have an effect on them. So it's not all placebo effect. But the placebo effect does seem to be a plus minus sort of effect on things as well. So, you know, if you believe it's going to work, that drug's going to work better if you believe it than if you don't believe it.
Yeah.
And that herb's going to work better if you believe it.
Yes. Yes. And that ritual that you're doing to cleanse your house is going to work better if you believe it.
Right.
You see,
right.
And the whole thing, we say it all the time, you know, whether, you know, whatever you're doing. And I love the people who don't get that. It depends on what you're dealing with. It's like right tool, right job.
Yes.
And that seems to be across the board, no matter what you're doing. And I think it's important to think of these things, color outside the lines a little bit. Maybe try a different color that might not quite be the norm, or something along those lines when you're looking at this whole situation. Again, it bothers me, you know, don't they want us to know about, you know, the Bermuda Triangle, or why do they constantly, I mean, gosh, Seriah, we looked back at what was the documentary? 1974, I think, Steve. And
Yeah, I
we're
think so.
talking to people like, you know, Green and what's the film, Gilbert and with the Bigfoot, the famous.
Oh, Patterson Gimlin.
Thank
Yeah.
you. All of those different people. Now, in 74, they had like all the big guys together. And they were all talking about their different paths to find Bigfoot and what they would do to finish. And one gentleman, I forget his name, he had been in it for, at the time, over 25 years. This is in 74 now, the documentary. And of course, he said, well, you know, I'm running out of time. I have to prove, because science won't accept it unless I have a body. So whether it's capture or kill, I have to do that. 2 of the other people, Green and another guy, were basically saying, no, I think there's other ways we can do this. Multiple of evidence, and people will believe after a multitude of evidence, and, you know, yada, 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 all around the table. And they all had valid points. My point was 25 years, 20 years, 15 years, 1974. Now 50 years later, where are we?
Yeah.
Where
And
are
that-
we?
And that's the thing. If this stuff was as simple as just a physical, like ape in the woods, we would have evidence by now. And it's not to say that there can't be an unknown ape in the woods in certain areas like the Pacific Northwest, where so much of it's never really been explored. You know, it's very dense and very vast forest where it might be able to survive undiscovered and only get encountered once in a great while at a logging camp or something like that. But when you're talking about like New Jersey, you know, there's not a whole lot that where a breeding population of large hominids could survive without notice. No matter how smart they are, sooner or later, somebody's going to figure it out, which suggests that there may be more than one thing going on. And I also think that because of the way our brains work, that sometimes we encounter things that we have never encountered before. They're totally novel. And one of 2 things happens. Either our brain ignores it. That's not there. That's not important because we don't know what it is. Or our brain tries to put a frame on it, and it's like a camouflage, a face on it, and goes, oh, that's new. What's that? And it quickly fiddles through and goes, I don't know, but it's scaring me because it's new. It must be a monster. There we go. Monster. And sometimes you get the one-off monsters that are really almost ridiculous. And I think that might be why that happens. But also, if you're in an area that has a bunch of monster reports and you encounter this unknown energy, your brain's going to go, oh, that must be the monster they're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Pine Barrens is where I live fast. And yeah, I've seen some weird things out here. But, I think that's absolutely something. And I have to go back to my grandmother, not my great grandmother, who would tell me about herbs in the woods and things like that. But because of the culture and what she went through as a child, she was born in 1890, so you can imagine what she came up through. And being in New Jersey, this close to New York and things like that, you kept it hush. I think for her parents probably even lied about who they were, just to, we're immigrants, which is horrible.
Right.
Like, here we are, but now we're saying we're immigrants, so we don't get, But anyway, they kept everything hush, very quiet. And she would tell me about the things in the woods. And she actually told me about the void. She called it like when all the sound goes away.
Oh, yeah. The Oz effect.
Yes. She says when all the sound goes away, of course, she was always listen to nature, follow the path. And she said there are things in the woods that we don't speak of because when we do, they hear you. And I said, can I speak lower? I remember saying, if I speak lower, if I whisper, she goes, no, they hear you. And she didn't say telepathic, but I think that's what she meant. And, it was because she went like this. They hear you. It's different. You can't do it in secret. And she said, I don't want to scare you. And that's when she put her hands on my shoulders. And she said, I don't mind you being out here. She says, I just don't want them to take you with them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all I needed to hear. So anytime the birds got quiet or the predator came near, I started recognizing who's scared, what's happening, listening to the different sounds.
Yeah.
So that's how I grew up. And I started looking at the whole thing as a spiritual too. They can go in and out, which made me very open to the idea of portals and things like that as a child. What do you think about all that? Portals possible? Peru?
Well, certainly anything's possible. And we don't know what this stuff is, so we don't, we can't say yes that's or no that's wrong without having an answer.
Right.
You could say, well, this seems more likely or less likely, but it's still we're playing with too many factors we don't understand. I don't know if we even need portals. I mean, I know there's enough stories out there to suggest that there's something like portals that exist. But again, if we're dealing with something that exists with us, that we're just normally, it's outside of our perception, it may not need so much of a portal to get into us. It just may need to build more energy or even take energy from us or an area in order to manifest in a different way and appear to us. And then, of course, our brain has to interpret that. So it's more than just a language barrier we're dealing with. It's something much, much vaster. It's a perception barrier.
Makes sense. AJK is asking, do you think Bigfoot takes people and turns them into Bigfoot? I've heard this. I've
never heard that.
You never heard that?
No.
When I heard it, the first time I heard it, I thought it was bizarre. But then I started thinking of maybe not turn them into Bigfoot, assimilating him into the tribe, maybe. Because so many people that were captured by Native Americans, and sometimes many decided to stay or wanted to be a part of. So why wouldn't that go on? Because to me, the Bigfoot has been nothing but tribal to me. There's a Cherokee culture keeper that talks all about offerings and things like that and living with. And I know Steve, same thing from coming, Tennessee and everything else. It's just a different kind of acceptance, with nature and not trying to change it, but live with. There's a difference between living with the earth and living on it, as far as I'm concerned, But the portal thing's got me. Now, Steve just did a thing on missing. I have to get this one in, and then I'm going to throw out some of these questions because they're great. About missing people who could hear the people looking for them. They're screaming.
Yes.
They can't hear it. And vice versa. We can hear her, but we cannot find her. I even put it in my book, Cabin 22, because I find it so bizarre. The cow, the whole thing. Tell me about this, you guys, and what you think.
No, I think again you could be looking at something that's a slightly different frequency. So maybe what a portal is something that changes the frequency someone's existing on. So they're not changed so much that you can't hear them anymore, but you can't see them. You're not interacting with them in the same way.
Like a dog whistle.
Right.
You know, that's a perfect example of hearing, you know, the dog can hear it, but
Yep.
you can't.
Yep.
So why not? You know, I
Just-
love that.
Our perceptions are very, very limited. And there's only so much that we've built tools to be able to perceive. And who knows what's beyond that?
Exactly. Like the perception too of and Edna's she's also from a Native American background, and they called it the boogeyman, and that's a lot of those stories are to keep kids out of trouble. And you know, everybody's got the boogeyman or whatever you call it. I think a lot of those legends come from all that, but there are real things out there. I mean, you know, nobody knew what a shark was till they called it a shark.
Right.
And that's definitely a monster in the ocean. You know, so many things that we don't know because it doesn't have a name doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And I just think some of these things would rather be. I mean, I heard many people say, well, I don't find a Bigfoot carcass. Well, I don't see a lot of bear carcasses either. You know, I've been in many a woods. You know, that whole thing doesn't really hold water, especially if they can go back and forth. And I do think in some cases they have that ability. I don't think they're the only ones. I think sometimes we might very well go back and forth.
Yes.
And what I mean by that is, how do I know? I'm not going to jump to conclusions because I hear steps coming down my staircase. It might be an echo from the past, or you know, or it might be me yesterday when I
Right.
came down, and somehow
Yep.
time has, you know, shifted. I mean,
And if time happens all at once, which is entirely possible, then you know your perception has widened slightly.
but then again, it goes into, we say consciousness, but in a simpler term, it could just be what you're ready to hear, what you're ready
Sure.
to hear. And you know, the other day I had voices outside of my head, and I know that sounds strange, but usually I hear a voice on this side, it's something good. I can't explain it, it's just my life pattern.
Yep. Yep.
And I listened, and it was an unfamiliar voice, which is weird because it's usually this one guy with a deep voice. Can't explain who that is.
Yep.
But its usual comes maybe 6 times in my lifetime. So 6 times in 60 years, every 10 years. And this was different. And I'm like, but it was very persistent. I'm like, okay. I'm going to call him and tell him. And sure enough, I called the person. They got out of the shower. They did exactly what the voice told me to tell them to do. Did it and got what he was going after in 12 minutes. It was just perfect timing. Bam, 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 bam. Perfect place, perfect timing, perfect
Right.
thing. Wasn't me. I was just a vessel. You know, I had
Yeah.
nothing to do with it but reacting to it.
Well, I will just know things, and it's and yeah, there've been times where I've heard a very specific voice, just like you, except mine's a feminine voice.
Okay.
That will give me detailed information. In fact, it's how I got the name Seriah. It was spoken into my name. But there are others where I just know things, and I don't know how I know them, but they're just apparent, like they're just information in my head. And I remember that the clearest example of this was one of my co-hosts at the last exit. He was a postgrad at Cornell, and the project he was a part of was sending him to like Wisconsin. And so he came in and he said, there's bad news. I'm moving because they're sending me to Wisconsin. And I was like, and he said this to me, and I turned around and I went, no, you're not leaving. And he kind of got upset because he didn't want to leave. And he started going, no, I signed a contract. I have to go. I'm like, oh, I didn't say you don't want to. I'm like, you're not going. And so for weeks, they were building this new lab and everything where he was supposed to go. And it just kept building where it was like it was now a week before he was supposed to leave. He was like, there's nothing that's stopping this. And the week before, he comes in and goes, how the fuck did you know? And I turned around and looked at him and went, no, what? He's like, I'm not leaving. And I'm like, oh, right. Told you that. and I compare it, your mic's off, Sysco. And I compare it to being a passenger in a car. And like, we're driving down a road we've never been on. And I look and go, and see a sign half covered by weeds, but there's a rest area in 3 miles. And the person driving is like, how would you know that? We've never been down this road. And I'm like, but there was and they're like, there was no sign. And it's like, but there was. You just were looking there while I was looking here.
It's so interesting because I don't know how long you go through where you just listen. It's like a second nature. It's like I'm trying to ignore it. It just got louder. The other time that happened to me, and that was a female voice, but it was different. I saw it in a dream. It wasn't lucid dreaming. It was just brighter. It was different. It was like a visitation dream, how you would explain that. I could smell it, taste, that kind of thing. And all of a sudden the cloud changed into a voice, and this woman's face popped out, and it was almost slightly cartoonish, but real at the same time, almost like they took a real person and they tried to make it look like a comic book. And I mean, she was wearing the pink earrings. She popped out of the 60s with the little blonde hair, with the little, twiggy kind of haircut. And she just said, and at first I didn't hear. I saw her mouth move, but I didn't hear her. And then she just kind of yelled it like the cloud, like an old cartoon cloud that just puffs out the wind. And she said, gas! And I just sat up and I'm like, what? And at first I didn't smell anything, but when I really sat up and looked around, I was a little higher sitting on the bed, and I guess my head went into the gas and I could smell it. And the stove had gotten turned on. It's about 3 o'clock in the morning. And I'm like, I smell gas. And of course everybody got up. We found it. We shut it off and opened the windows and the doors. Amazing to me. Never saw her before. Didn't recognize the voice because it was one word, but still. And I told a friend about it. She goes, well, that's your spirit guide. I'm like, how do you know? How can you just put a name on it? Oh, that's this. Or if you talk to somebody else, they would say, that's an angel. Right, and if you talk to somebody else, they would say, that's a loved one that just wanted to help. That's your higher self. Yeah. That's the rest of your soul that's on the other side. Different.
Or if you want to take a very rational approach, you could say, you did smell the gas. You didn't realize you smelled the gas, but your unconscious kind of went, hey, gas. Yeah,
it's amazing. And there's no one thing that would make one more true than the other.
No, and it doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't.
The fact that you were alerted to something important, and that's what mattered.
Yes, and that's cool, and that you listened, and it was like what you said, the robot almost, or like not even your subconscious, almost like a muscle memory for your whole body. And you just get used to doing this, and it's almost like, not mundane, but second nature, or your nature, where you listen, and I know Steve has prophetic dreams all the time, and to you it's almost like that gift that's a curse at the same time, because if I can't do something with this, why do I have it? If I can't prevent it, why? And I don't know what that is. What would your thoughts be on that? Like, why do we have these if we can't do something with it?
A good question. It could be simply that we're picking up on stuff. It's not that we're meant to do anything with it. It's just that, again, we're dealing with either time as a static thing or time where it is all happening at once. So occasionally you tap into another time period. I'm trying to remember the name of the book, Time Loops. It was a very good book, great interview with the guy. And he postulates that time is static, and that sometimes we just get a little ahead of ourselves in that thing. And one of the interesting things he was researching is that most of the time when people have prophetic dreams, like they might have a dream of a disaster, but what they're actually dreaming of is when they found out about the disaster. And the one thing he put in there that I found really interesting was there was a volcano or something that went off somewhere. And the guy had a dream that a volcano went off and 100,000 people were killed. And then he saw the newspaper article, and the newspaper article said this volcano went off and 100,000 people were killed. And when they corrected it, it was only 10,000 people. But in his dream, he got the 100,000 people. And the idea behind that is that certain emotional states, strong emotions, can send information backwards in time.
Oh, wow.
And create sort of a time loop.
Wow.
I cannot remember his name for the life of me, but if you look up time loops, that's the name of the book. It's a
Right,
pretty
it'll
thick
pop
volume
up.
of a lot
Mods,
of
if one
different
of you can
examples.
find that, pop the link up there for that book. Black Ops mods, man. These guys are going to find it, and they'll put the link up there. But that's an amazing thing. What do you think about that, Steve? As far as you having those dreams, that's an amazing thing to think about. That would just actually
and this,
sends it back to you.
yeah, and just the fact that that sometimes it's not enough information that you can do anything about it. That's the frustrating part, but it's just
Sure.
it's still good to know that sometimes and maybe someday it will be in such a way that I can help somebody or
Yeah.
Maybe work
avoid
towards getting
something
it.
on my own.
Yeah, getting a little bit more. And I do think a lot of these things are very much like a muscle, like you work, whether you have intuition. I think everybody has intuition. I think, like you said, with the Kundalini, some people, it manifests different times. There's different things that you can do, like they say with your third eye or your pineal gland, working through, there's different, decalcification, because for sure they've tried to shut us down on that. And, this whole theory of, I find it fascinating that certain people think that we've been altered to not be the full us we can be, whether that could be alien life or whether it's evolution, however you want to look at it. It's not like we're not open to a lot of things, and it could just be the environment. I don't know how you feel about that one.
So first of all, it's Eric Wargo who wrote Time Loops.
Okay. Great.
Highly
Thank you, guys.
And actually, there's a story in there that talks about a woman who had a premonition that she was going to get into a car crash. I think taking her kid somewhere, and so she said, "Well, I'm not going. We'll wait till tomorrow." And then they went the next day and got into the car accident. So she did try to prevent it, but in trying to prevent it, she caused it. So his argument is that the future can sometimes affect the past, and hence the time loop idea.
Right.
As far as stuff interfering with us, I think there's two things that come to mind. One, we exist in a network of electromagnetic waves from our technology. We have no idea what the real effect of that is. We do know that, say, going outside barefoot or going out into the wilderness can improve our health. And can improve our mindset. I like technology. I'm not saying technology is bad, but I think there needs to be more balance. And we should be, do we really need 5G, for example?
Exactly.
They want to push it off 5G, and it's like, okay, I don't believe 5G is causing some of the stuff that conspiracy people are talking about, but at the same time, we don't even know what 4G is doing to us. We don't know what 3G is doing to us.
Indeed.
How about we take a better look at some of this? Because some people are more susceptible to those energies than others.
Yes.
There are some people who are so sensitive, they have to live where there are no cell signals and stuff like that because they're so sensitive to electromagnetic fields.
People that lived under the high tension power lines that develop tumors and things like that just from and also people that have hallucinations and flashes of light and things that they eventually attributed to these high power lines.
And look at microwaves. Have you ever taken a reactor? What I mean? What am I trying to say?
Geiger counter?
Yes, thank you. In front of your microwave, you wouldn't stand in front of it again. You probably wouldn't want to be in the room with it. And same thing with cell towers. And I wonder why I have eagles living in my cell tower. First of all, it's sad that they have to choose a cell tower. I'm big on the whole we've pushed nature out. I'm yay nature,
So am I.
I know. And that's the thing. A lot of people really don't get that whole thing of going into the woods and getting one with nature again, but you're also getting away from all these waves. I mean, Art Bell said it a long time ago. He says, where do you think all these radio waves are? Where do you think all this stuff is? It's right here. It's going through you, your cell phone. How many times you heard you're not supposed to hold your cell phone up to your head? It's creating tumors or in your pocket, or especially a lot of women that carry it right here, and then, different things are going on that way. So be definitely aware. And what about the birds tearing apart the 5G towers?
Yeah. I read something one time, it was just a theory, but this guy was saying that if you notice that when microwave ovens came into vogue and suddenly they were affordable and everybody could get one, that women's breast cancer rates went up. And if you think about it, that's about the level that a microwave is in most kitchens. Would be breast level. So there you go. Maybe, who knows?
Oh, that's the thing. It's hard to correlate that type of data, and correlation doesn't always mean causation either. So sometimes it looks like something's causing something, but it could be a combination of things. It could literally be random chance.
Yeah.
But so the other thing is the whole cycle of time thing. So if you go by the Yuga cycle or the Great Year cycle, we're kind of at the lowest point of that. And as you move up from that point, the Kali Yuga and such, you become more enlightened. You become more in touch with that more spiritual part of yourself until you reach the golden age. And Robert Schoch had done research on solar activity and its connection to psychic abilities. And he found that over the last 100 years or so of psychic research in labs, which go back to the late 1800s, the psychics would score higher when there was higher solar activity, which is almost, to me, it almost seemed like it would have been the other way. Like lower solar activity would have meant less interference, but apparently the solar activity actually charges up our psychic abilities to some degree. And you find that across the board, you saw a rise in accuracy in psychic laboratory studies during high solar activity. And he joked that this meant one of two things. Either A, there's a conspiracy of psychics since the 1800s to only have good results during high solar activity, or the sun directly affects our psychic abilities and psychic abilities are real. Obviously, the second one is far more likely than the first. But if something is changing as we move through the Yuga cycle or the Great Year cycle, who knows what that's doing to our consciousness? And if we're in a binary system, which is one of the theories as to what is actually going on, is we may be in a binary system with something like Sirius. As another sun moves into our influence over the course of 24,000 years, how is that affecting our consciousness? And if our sun is enhancing our psychic abilities, what would another star also do to us as it got closer?
Wow. Right? Well, see, that's the thing. If you strip away all of the, not, like technology, that's great. And we're talking on technology. Without this, we wouldn't have met.
Right,
There's a lot
right.
of good things too, and it all depends on what you do with it as well.
Yes.
But if you strip away all that and you go back to nature, just complete nature, and you go back to the way people lived before all that, maybe even the Amish at this point, are they healthier? Were they actually healthier without the processed food, without the EMFs, without the different things? Who knows? Because a lot of stuff wasn't, written down, journalized, for many years.
We can tell from, bones and stuff that we found. We know life, that there are estimates of how long people live at different points. And we've definitely gotten in the higher range now. But that might be despite ourselves, because as much damage as we're doing, we also have enough medical treatments and stuff to kind of repair some of it. And I'm not sure that's the best way of going about it.
Yeah.
The Dark Ages definitely did not have a good lifespan. But when you look at some native people and older accounts, you see those lifespans go up. So, it's really hard to say because there's so many factors. It's not just one thing.
Right. Like the anthill and the herb.
And the garlic.
Yeah.
Yes.
It had to be just that. That was the most important thing.
Yeah.
And where it was grown, you couldn't do it in a lab. Even if you got those things, you didn't have, the atmosphere. You didn't have the way the sun hit it every day. You didn't have the animals that might have, been living by it or, their effect. So everything had to be the same, and they left it alone. Of course, we're killing rainforests like crazy, and I'll tell you, there's a lot of herbs that are only coming from there. So that's definitely, if you want a good cause, get on that rainforest, because that's huge. But that's
Agreed.
a major thing. That's a major thing. And I think nature really does have what Seriah said about going out barefoot. They called us tree huggers for a long time, but there's really a thing about standing barefoot and holding onto a tree, and just that imagining of, all the negativity going into the ground and then pulling up at the same time and go back and forth. Pets, I think, do that. You're an avid cat lover, as am I, and many people in this chat. But in a lot of ways, they are here to not just show us unconditional love and all that. You can add all that if you like. It's a wonderful theory and it's very possibly true. I don't know. But I can tell you they know when you're upset, and they'll come and they'll comfort you. And I heard a great theory a couple weeks ago that that's what they feel their job is. That's why they'll get on your chest. They're almost trying to pull it out of you, like little mini what was that old night gallery thing, like sin eaters, you know? You've ever heard that one with the sin eater back in the day? Oh wow,
that was a real thing.
Yeah, and it was a creepy episode. Tell us about that, if anybody's ever heard. Do you know a little bit about it?
I don't know that much about it, but people would be paid to poor people would be paid to come in and basically eat the sins of the rich. They would place things on their bodies that was supposed to absorb their sin, usually when the rich person was getting close to dying. And then they would eat whatever it was, and I forget exactly the details of it, but the concept would be that they're eating their sin so that person, the rich person, could go to heaven. But the poor person would now have to deal with all that sin that the rich person committed.
And it's what a concept, you know, and it was in several different cultures. The night gallery that I saw, which I think was done by Rod Serling, I think he did that one too.
Yes, he did.
Did he? At the end of this poor man, I felt so sorry for him because he was poor and hungry. And of course he was like, yeah, I'll come in, I'll eat all the food. And he's eating the food. It was actually laid on the body. The food was supposed to absorb it and he's eating it. And the guy's dying, just like Seriah said. The crescendo at the end of this thing, because Rod Serling was a son of a bitch, boy, to get you. He screams because the guy he just ate all the sins of was actually a sin eater himself. Yeah. So he had all the sin that he had eaten throughout his life, and it all came upon him. And of course, it was horrific. So, I mean, that thing stuck with me forever. And I mean, it's just it makes as much sense as anything else, because we don't know. And again, if it's that belief makes it so, if your faith in whatever you're doing makes it so, if that's all it takes, then that is actually a part of manifesting. You know, in a way, it's manifesting. You're manifesting the faith and the whole thing to work, and maybe that has something to do with the energy. I don't know.
It could.
Yeah, it very well could.
I mean, in the end, everything is energy, so.
And I think that's one thing with people when they get into this, because they're thinking what's on the other side. And because of you, you know, I kind of really thought a lot about some of the stuff that I was putting in there, and I approached it as, you know, it could have been this. And, you know, at the time I thought it was this. And then I learned some things, and I looked back and I looked at it again differently. And then I talked to some people and I looked at it, and, you know, and some people I went, no, I really felt it was this, because, you know, you'll have people go, they're all demons.
Right.
You know? And I'm like, I don't think anything can be that cut and dry. I don't think anything we've talked about tonight can be cut and dry. And I think that's the one thing I've really learned so much from you, is to look at things a little differently. But I also got to thank you for all the times I've called in and you listen to me patiently. And you're probably sitting on the other side going, this lady is batshit crazy, but she so believes what she's saying.
You know, it was Robert Anton Wilson that said you always have to question your own belief systems, or as he liked to abbreviate, question your own BS. And that's it. Like anything that's happened to me, I always sit back and I'm like, okay, what was that? Okay, it could be this, it could be this, it could be this. What other possibilities can I come up with? When I started the show, I mean, part of my goal was to look at this phenomena from different angles. You know, like Whitley Strieber tells a story about a family who their son had died, and their young son was sleeping upstairs, and they see a fireball moving slowly across the sky, across the street. And they had the front door open, I think, and they're watching this fireball slowly move. And they're like, whoa, what is that? And they, at the same time that this is happening, their young son comes downstairs and says that his deceased older brother, just came to visit him and told him he's fine and that they shouldn't worry. So I'm like, okay, so what was happening here? You know, because this was initially looked at as a UFO report. But what would aliens have to do with the kid seeing his dead brother? And I'm like, well, what if maybe there was something energetically going on there in the ground, or coming from outer space or whatever, that created this fireball. whether it be, like plasma formation or whatever, but that same energy allowed their son to tap into the energy field of his deceased brother where he could interact with him, put him in a slightly altered state of consciousness. So you have two events that are happening concurrently, but are completely different.
Amazing.
Rather than assuming that just because two of them happened together, they were connected somehow. When we were talking about like the Glimmerman stuff earlier, one of my weirder experiences was walking in from getting the mail one day, and to my left is my computer shop, to my right is the house, and I had the front door of the computer shop open. I was working on a bunch of laptops, installing Windows 10 on one of them, and I suddenly hear this very mechanical cuckoo noise, and it was loud, it echoed, and I was like, "What the hell was that?" And I'm looking around, there's no one around, and I'm like, is that some kind of new Windows 10 thing? Does it make a cuckoo noise now? And I start walking toward the shop, and as I do, this sort of ball, and I don't know how to describe it other than it was like a bubble that you could see through, and it just moved very steadily in front of me, and then disappeared by the side of the shop. And I saw it very clear as day, and it moved on a steady line. There was no variation to it like a bird. Like someone suggested it could be a hummingbird. But if you watch a hummingbird fly, first of all, they're very fast, and they tend to swoop when they fly. This thing was a straight line, like it was on a string. And I watched this, and it disappeared by the tree next to my shop, and I walked around the other side of the tree, and I couldn't find anything. And I ended up just nicknaming it the cuckoo bubble.
Oh, cool.
Whether or not that cuckoo noise and that bubble were connected is just an assumption. It may not have been. It's just that they happened concurrently. There was the cuckoo and then the bubble. And you could say, well, maybe it was a drone. Maybe it was a test drone that someone was flying. They initiated a cuckoo noise to get my attention, and then flew a drone in front of me to see if I would notice it and what I would interpret it as after noticing it. Or it was something paranormal. Who knows?
And that's just it. Who knows? And I think it's the arguing too. It's just like JFK. It's a perfect
I'll be right
thing.
back.
Sure, honey. JFK is a perfect thing. Again, we've got wonderful people with credentials, out the yin yang. Okay, each person research, dedicated, gone documents. And again, they have a piece of the puzzle. They may not be wrong. But it does click in with this, and when you get it all together, we find out, okay, we've got this, this picture, and it's not pretty, but so many people were involved, and that's the number one thing I think that people shut down on any kind of conspiracy, which is basically two people conspiring together to do usually bad things. That's all a conspiracy is, and there's multiple of them, and you were probably involved in one today. Who knows? Even if you just said a surprise birthday party is a conspiracy. Sure. So it's just to sound it that way, it makes you afraid to say. And that's what they want to do. They want to keep you not talking. But the paranormal, the same way. I have a friend, Brian Bowden, been in, looking for cryptids in New York out there. And Al Santeria, 50-something years out there trying to get the dogmen, all the different stuff, Bigfoot especially. And they tell me all the time, they go to the conventions, and it's like, it's got to be one thing or the other. Yeah. And things aren't connected. And I think after 50 years, Seriah, that I've been, looking into this, I just want to go out going, you know what, guys? It's all connected. In some way, all of this is connected, whether it's just the energy or if it's like an avatar thing. I thought that was a great concept for a movie because, from plants, we've gone over the plant experience, the rice experiments, the sound vibration waves that move the sand to a beautiful Mandela looking thing or something really ugly with whatever. I just think that all these things very well may be connected, and us searching for answers is absolutely fantastic. The inquiring minds want to know, but do you think that that's the biggest problem in this? Is that everybody, if yours is right, mine has to be wrong. Why can't they both be correct?
Well, because people want certainty. People like people who have answers. Confidence is one of those things that's in that Invisible Gorilla book. the illusion of confidence. If someone tells you something and they sound really confident, you're more likely to believe them, even if they have no idea what they're talking about. It's not a rational type of assessment we make. They did an experiment where they told people, okay, so you're going to pretend to have this medical issue, and we're going to send you to 2 different doctors, and you tell us which one you think gave you the most accurate response. And the one doctor immediately said, I know what it is. It's this, and we would put you on this medication, etc. And they went, okay. And then they went to the second doctor who went, that's interesting. And he looked it up in a book, and he went, well, I'm thinking it's probably this, and I think we should do this to take care of it. And so they asked the people afterwards, well, which one would you have gone with? And they said, well, we'd go with the first one because he didn't have to look it up. That illusion of confidence. And the first one was the one that was wrong.
Wow.
But because he was confident he was right, that's, they were like, no, I'll go with the confident guy. So, I mean, that draws, when you have the paranormal, people they like the mystery, but sometimes they're also afraid of things that are unexplained. We want some sense of, we got a grasp on things. So they want to listen to the guy who goes, I know that there are 18 alien races, talking to us, and they've been visiting the planet for 4,000 years. And, and they know, they're absolutely certain. When you start introducing more and more things that make things weirder, where some of us love that, we're like, oh, that makes it more interesting. A lot of people, that bothers them on a deeper level. Like, you can say, oh, Bigfoot's interesting, even though we don't know it's real. When you say, well, what if Bigfoot's not an ape? What if Bigfoot's something entirely different? And then they start going, okay, I was comfortable with the idea of an unknown ape, or I was comfortable with the idea of aliens, but I'm not so comfortable with I don't know what this is.
Right.
When I had Seth Breedlove on for the Whitehall Monster documentary he did for Small Town Monsters, which is basically a Bigfoot-like creature in northwestern New York. It was a flap of this monster. And at some point, I asked him the question I know he was probably dreading I was going to dig up, which was, did anything else weird happen during that flap? And realistically, what you heard was, a few people saw a Bigfoot-like monster, but mostly it was poltergeist-like stuff, rocks being thrown, things like that. And so I asked him this, and he very reluctantly said, well, I mean, the woman across the road did have a UFO land in her front lawn and leave a burn mark. And I said, and you don't think this was connected to the sudden flap of monster activity? And he's like, well, that's a UFO. These were monsters,
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And there's so many when, I met somebody at the Gettysburg Bash, and I'm definitely going to have them on. It's a father and son team, and I don't want to mess up the name. But they've basically spent a lot of time overlapping the Bigfoot sightings with the UFO.
Oh, yeah.
Missing people. This and that and everything else, and I personally, it's possible. I can't imagine why Bigfoot would want one of us, because we're just a pain in the ass. Why would you want to bring that in? What possible good? But I don't know. My grandmother did say, I don't want them to take you with them. Maybe but then she was hearing about missing people and stuff like that. Believe me, David Paulides did not discover missing people. He just started putting them together. It's been happening a long time.
Sure.
Yeah, and God bless him for it, and Steve and Bill's channel has done wonderful stuff. Especially, I love the fact that they're really focusing on a lot now on Spirit Away, which is a lot of the Native American missing people that just are not getting the coverage because of the whole, people don't get the whole federal land, and reservation land fed, and, the overlap there, and why a lot of it gets thrown out of court and people don't even look, they just don't have the manpower. So they're trying to get the word out on that. But now this whole missing people thing, we've got the possibility of sound, they're hearing them, can't see them, or maybe frequency stuff. What do you think? I think it's multiple things, and I honestly think it's a lot of this human trafficking government stuff. I gotta say. So, but what's going on? When it comes
to missing people, like the stuff David Paulides covers, 99% of it is prosaic explanations.
Okay.
People got lost. They got lost somewhere that they weren't expected to get lost. Or something happened that made it weird. There are a few very strange cases in there. We actually did a show back in January, I think. Someone on Reddit had researched about 13 cases out of David's books and found that now there's a lot more information available,
Okay.
and those people were actually found.
Yeah.
Wow.
But likely when David wrote them up, I mean, all these newspapers weren't online at the time.
Okay.
And we did a couple of them in the Patreon segment to see if there was more information. And like one was basically the same stuff. One we couldn't find anything additional. And one had a bunch of weird information on it where we were like, it almost sounds like the woman was Fey-ledged. Like she walked out of a church or wherever she worked, and she just wandered into the woods and climbed a tree and stayed there. And like you get all this different, the stuff David put down was accurate, but there was little tidbits more here and there where like, okay, this actually is weirder than what David had down in his book.
Yeah.
There's all these weird little things. There was another one where apparently this girl had wandered off in the same place that someone else had gotten lost. Another little kid had gotten lost. And when we dived into that one, we found that both kids followed the same game trail away from the campground. So that was kind of okay, that's not that weird that these 2 5, 6-year-olds, whatever, followed a game trail. And it was like 2 years apart. The first kid was found too late. He had died of hypothermia. The second girl, in David's account, and we couldn't find the newspaper that he found this in. I'm sure he reported it accurately. But in that newspaper account, apparently they said she was found on a sandbar surrounded by waist-deep water. And they had no idea how she got there. But she was alive and fine. In the other accounts, they're exactly the same until it gets to the point where they find the girl, but they say they found the girl on the side of the road eating a candy bar. And we all just stopped and went, what?
What?
A little bit of difference there.
Yeah, it's like, and we couldn't find the newspaper that he took it from. He must have gotten from a library or something. Because
he doesn't publish his sources. And people accuse me of taking his stories. We get our information from the same place he does. I've never used anything out of any of David Paulides' books.
Well, he did publish the source. He had the name of the paper there. It's just that the name of the paper didn't have its stuff online.
Yeah.
So we couldn't verify if that's what it said, if he got it wrong, or if the paper got it wrong, or whatever. But 2 other papers said the child was found on the highway eating a candy bar. And that they point out in the newspaper article, the kid followed the same trail as this kid last year. And the only reason we found her in time is because of that kid. We knew where to look.
Wow.
So I mean, I think a lot of them end up being that. It's just we don't have all the information. They look weird. There was a case we covered at one point with this woman out somewhere in California. She was jogging in a state park, and she stopped to use the bathroom. They had like the little, public bathrooms and stuff. She's with her dog. She goes into the bathroom. This guy comes in after her and tells her he's going to rape and then kill her. Somehow she manages to get away, and she takes off into the woods at a dead run with her dog running with her, and she gets lost. And she's now in a complete part of the forest she is not familiar with. She gets separated from the dog. The dog runs off. So now her husband, after she doesn't come back, they get a search party. They're searching where she was supposed to be running. She's not there. The dog comes back and finds the search party, but doesn't lead them to her. They did eventually find her. But if they had not found her, that would have been a missing 411 case, because she jogged that path all the time. There was no evidence of foul play of any kind, and the dog came back.
Yeah.
So they were just lucky that she was off where they were looking, but managed to find them. I forget exactly how it played out, and then she was able to tell them what happened.
Oh wow. Yeah.
But if we didn't have that information, it would be like, well, how did this woman who, was jogged this area all the time just disappear?
Right. Yeah. And I think that you're absolutely right. There are a lot of cases like that where if you just had a little more information, or if you go back, the information is sparse, missing parts and stuff like that. I do think there's a lot of cases that are extremely bizarre. I think, it's like portal thing. I mean, it could be all this natural stuff. You could fall in a crevice and, leaves cover you up and they're not going to find you. I mean, It can happen. I mean, I've, walked mountains all the time. But I do think there's some wild ones. And the reason I lean that way is because, I'd say about 25, 30 years, I've been getting little pieces from psychics and things like that. And I think that's one of the reasons he says I've never had a psychic be able to tell me. Because I know some people that just stop and say, I can't go there because it's too big. It has to do with this and this, and I can't say that out there because, I fear for my life. And I've had that from 5 different ones that don't deal with each other at different times without, solicitation, really. And they just get this like scared look, like, there's something going on. And some of these are ones that actually work with the police to help find missing people or find, solve cases and things like that, So there's definitely something going on. What it is, I don't know. The ones that intrigue me, Steve and I talk about them all the time, are the ones where you hear the wind and the cell phones crushed, and or you hear these kind of like the booms and stuff. The one with the hunters is really good, where he hears the metal trap sound and that kind of stuff is going on. I don't know what it is, and maybe we're not meant to know. Maybe we'll know when we're on, when we go wherever we're going and figure it out then. I don't know.
It may also be that again, that stuff seems weird out of context, but if we had a better context for it, it may not seem that weird.
Yeah. Makes sense.
And I'm sure human trafficking has a part to that. I'm sure serial killers have a part to that, or just random psychopaths. Again, I've put that in the category of natural things. That's stuff we know. I mean, to me, I really like the idea of the paranormal not being so much paranormal, but rare. They're the rare things we experience in life.
Yeah,
and
it's a beautiful way of putting that. I love
Jeffrey
that.
Kripal once put it that absolutely blew me away. He said, he likes calling it the supernatural. He said, the supernatural happens for a reason in our lives, which is why it's hard to replicate in labs, because it's there for a reason. It's there to move us forward in some way or have an effect on us, which is also why it happens in liminal time periods in our life.
Love it.
And so someone had asked earlier, and this kind of fits in with a few things we just talked about, of what like my scariest paranormal experience was or something. And most of my paranormal experiences are weird. They don't really freak me out. There's only been one I can think of that really freaked me out at the time. And I'm trying to remember all the details. I just wrote about this on the book I'm working about. Well, I say just, but like 6 months ago I wrote about it and realized that all this stuff happened in like 2 days or 3 days or something. I had gone out to the back of my property where I would usually go out taking walks, and that's where I would also conduct magical rituals if I wanted to do something. And I had gone out there, and for the first time ever, there was this really oppressive air there. And I was like, what is going on back here? Like this is really weird back here. And so I did this ritual to kind of banish whatever it was. And a few moments later, I look at the cornfield, and when it happened, I called it a distorted monkey creature. Came out through the cornfield and then just disappeared. And it freaked me out. And part of my brain's going, it's dark, it's corn, it was probably pareidolia. But it shook me when that happened. I was like, that was creepy. And I couldn't even walk back there at night for a while after that because that freaked me out so much. And over time, I kind of said, no, you know what? It was probably just pareidolia. The corn was probably moving a little bit, and I was already, feeling that sense of fear from the oppressive feeling of the area.
The corn is creepy anyway.
Sometimes
I gotta say, it really is.
So it was either the next day or the day after. There was this Potter's Field from the psychiatric institution, Willard Psychiatric Institution on Seneca Lake. My friends lived in that town. We would go up to this Potter's Field, and we built a little bench to overlook the lake. And we're up there one day, and there's 3 of us standing there. And you can't see the field from where we are. You can only see, there's too many bushes and stuff in the way. And all of a sudden, the tree, the biggest tree that's sitting between us and the field, just starts shaking. And on the other side, we could hear what it made me think of is I thought there was a deer there running its horns against the tree, because the whole tree is shaking. The ground is shaking, like the thunk, the thunk, the thunk. And I'm like, oh, that's not good. And I'm thinking, is a deer defending its, doe
Yeah.
or something like that? Are we threatened? Does it think we're a threat? And so, but we couldn't see anything. So my one friend is freaking out. He's like, what the hell is that? And I'm like, I'm going to walk down the trail, because you couldn't walk out that way. You had to walk down and around. So I walked down the edge of the cliff. And just when I get to the point where I could see the other side, it stops. And there's nothing there. So he's like, what's there? And I'm like, nothing. I don't see anything. And so I come back and it starts doing it again. And now he's really freaking out. And I'm like, all right. And so I quickly run down the path. There's nothing there. I go all the way out to the field. It's a big open field. There's nothing there. And I come back and he's still like, how can there be nothing? The whole tree was moving. And it starts doing it again. Our other friend is sitting there, who's also freaking out a little bit. But it turns out he was freaking out because he didn't know what we were talking about. He wasn't seeing the tree move. And so we realized this, and then, they're both like, we need to leave now. We need to just go. Let's go. And so we left. And they went home, and my ride wasn't picking me up for a bit. And so I turned around and went back there by myself. And I'm up there, and there's and you had that quiet, that Oz effect. Mm-hmm. Didn't have it earlier, but this time it was definitely there. And I'm walking along and I'm hearing something move across the tops of the trees. And it's making monkey noises. And big branches are dropping from the trees, but there's nothing there. And I stood there and watched it for a while until I had to go meet my ride, but nothing else happened. And I was just like, what the hell is going on? And I didn't connect it to this all happened in a matter of like 2 or 3 days. These were all separate events to me initially until I read back in my notes and went, oh, this all happened at once. And oddly enough, without knowing anything about Robert Schoch's work, I noted at some point during the midst of this that there were a lot of sunspots because it was reporting in the news. And for some reason, I just made that note and I'm going, I wonder if that's just what was happening. I was picking up on more stuff, or energy was more active because the sun was more active.
It's all possible. And again, like you said, it could have happened because that time in your life, that's what this whole show has been about. The journey meets the road. It's like you're on your journey, and then sometimes the road hits you, and you have to go back and reassess things that have happened to you, and look at them with today's mind, today's brain, today's eyes, because they're a little wiser. Steve, you had your grandmother come to you and tell you there's things that you are meant to see and nobody else.
Yeah, and then that you would see things that were meant for other people sometimes. That, maybe somebody else was doing something or they were meant to see that, and you just happened to observe it as well. It doesn't mean anything to you other than you can see things that everybody can't. So I used to have problems with that when I was a kid. I'd see stuff and like, what was that? It didn't scare me, but it just made me really, really curious.
And also, why was that? Why was that? Because as we get older, we look back, like you just said, Seriah, different times in your life you're meant. One of the best things I ever heard is that, we all have spirit guides, really everything is theory.
Right.
But some theories resonate better with your experience on your journey at this time in your consciousness, what you're willing to accept, what you're willing to, look outside the lines. And they said that everybody is born with several spirit guides, usually one. And I'm like, okay, that's cool because you're not really alone, and that's neat. But then you get different ones as you need them, because of the things you're going through and their specialty. It might be that they're helping you over depression or lost loved one, or, whatever life event it may be. And I thought that was a wonderful concept because, again, in a lot of Native American and tribal traditions, even your name changes as you grow. Crazy Horse had 28 different names. We call him Crazy Horse, but his name at that point in time, he was being called Crazy as his horse. And it got shortened because he was at that time in his life, he was just, crazy, and so was his horse. I mean, it was that simple, but it spoke of his character at the time in his journey. And I think that's really interesting. And why wouldn't it move with you, as you need it? It's interesting.
The other thing regarding memory is that before I started looking at all my notes, and I was one of those things I knew early on that was put into my head is that I needed to start keeping notes, but not just notes of the weird stuff, everything. And so that's what I started doing. And if I had not done that, I would not have realized how much other stuff was going on in my life when these things happened. So many of my weird experiences were happening at liminal points in my life. Had I not recorded all that other stuff, I never would have saw that. I just would have had the main, events, which sure is interesting, but it's a lot more interesting in context. But my memory of that event, so my two friends who were with me, the one who didn't see anything was the guy who was with me when numerous other things happened. Like, so he was used to weird stuff happening around me. The other one never had any experiences. And so my memory was, well, the guy who saw the stuff must have been the guy who, had all the experiences with me. And then I'm looking through my notes and it was actually the opposite.
Oh, wow.
So it was my friend who had all the experiences with me didn't see the tree shake. And I'm going, really? Huh. How does that work?
How does that fit? Yeah.
But that's where the memory just kind of like, I think I remember these things well because I wrote them down, because writing does help memory. But also, I think my brain just decided to correct it. Like, that doesn't make sense. We're going to correct that. Or the thing I remembered correctly that was bugging me for a while, when I was given the name Seriah, it was actually, I was sitting in the back seat of my friend's car coming back from a Scorpions concert. And I know exactly where I was when this happened. Like, because it really stuck in my head. Obviously, it was pretty much shouted in my right ear. And so I'm sitting in the back with a friend of mine who's asleep next to me. And we were actually driving right past Willard at the time. And she lived in Willard. And this is what bugged me about that memory, is that we would have been driving past her house when my name was spoken into my head. And I'm like, why were we driving past her house? That doesn't make any sense. Why didn't we drop her off at her house? And so I'm looking through the book and I get to that point and realize, oh, she came to my house, which is on this side of the concert, and left her car here. And my friend picked us up from here and we went to the show. So we were going back to my house so she could get her car. Because I'm going, that memory has to be wrong, because we would have dropped her off at her house. It was right there.
Wow.
And then I'm like, oh, now it makes so much more sense. Okay, my memory wasn't wrong. I'm proud of that.
So it works both ways for sure, and like I said, like Steve tells the story, his first experience with the young boy who fell into the ground, and they ask, well, how could you remember something like that when you were so young? And I can look back and again, I think it's because it was so important and so profound at the time.
And it was just so vivid, yeah.
It's so vivid.
But I have a lot of memories, even beyond that. I was like 5 when that happened. I can remember being like 2 and 3. My earliest memory, I don't see how I can remember it, but I remember my dad put me up into a house that was just being built. The subflooring was in, and the joists and things. And turns out that was the house I grew up in, and I was only 6 months old when that was built. That's my earliest, but I didn't know where it was. I had the memory, but I didn't connect it with being the house I grew up in when it was being built.
Yeah, it is. And you wonder if it's almost like a burn in your mind, and
I don't know why that stuck out, but like I said, that's one of my earliest memories.
I have similar too. I can remember being like 2 years old and swallowing pennies, and my dad holding me upside down and beat me on the back to a beer song that was playing. It was Miller High Life,
and then I've met people that claim they don't remember anything, say, before 5 years old.
I barely remember anything prior to when I was given the name Seriah, honestly.
But that's a whole consciousness thing with you, Seriah, I think.
Yeah.
Because that really opened you up. And I do believe that there are people here that happens to, and then it's up to them to do something with it. And I think you've done something with it, to reach out there like Steve has done, to reach out there. And it's amazing how in this time, somebody can reach out and touch so many untold amounts of people. You never know
Yeah.
when something you say or a story is going to touch somebody, give somebody hope, give somebody a little clarity in their stuff.
It's amazing how far stuff carries. I was
Yes.
looking at our YouTube stats today. Last 28 days, we've had 2 million views.
It's
That's a
amazing.
lot of people
Congratulations.
listening to me tell stuff, So it's like that's almost frightening when you think about it. It's like
And each
2
of us
million
have
people.
gotten things from 2 years ago, an episode we did, and a comment will pop up and you'll see
Oh,
it in
yeah,
your studio or something. It's like, this got me through. I was going through this. And I think it's about, like we talked in the beginning, manifesting and, glass half full, half empty, and I'm like, there is no glass, but that's okay. That's my perception. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know where all these people are getting these glasses, but the thing is, it's just being, you can't be an optimist all the time, but I do believe that whole silver lining thing, like, it depends on how you want to look at it. Some bad things, I had an elder tell me once, the best way to be a healer, of a broken leg is to have had a broken leg. Perfect sense. You wouldn't think about it said like that, but of course you would understand pain better. You would understand what that person needed to be a better healer, to be a better, a better person, to pull that person
Indeed,
out.
that's why they only hire former alcoholics or drug addicts to help people in recovery.
Yes,
Yeah.
Because
exactly.
that mindset, you've been there, you understand. As Hunter S. Thompson wrote, those who truly know where the edge are the ones that have gone over it. So I think you've had to step over, you've had to step out, you've had to have something happen to you in order for you to understand it, to explain it to other people and help them deal with whatever they're having to deal with because of it.
Perfect sense. Like, you have to walk through a little darkness to appreciate the light too.
I categorize a lot of different types of dreams. And one of them is the type that starts out as a dream, but then seems to be an interaction with something.
Oh yeah.
And in this case, I was in a record store, and it was almost like a warehouse. It had upper levels and stuff, and I was going through records.
Oh wow.
And for some reason, Steve will appreciate this. Voivod pops a lot into my dreams. So I happen to be flipping through it. It's like, oh, Voivod record, cool. And I decided not to buy anything, and I start to leave. And I climb back down, and I'm walking toward the exit, and I get into like this circular area near the exit. And the dream suddenly becomes not a dream. And this light shines on me, and I'm stuck there. And this voice says, "What's the worst thing that's ever happened to you?" And I went, "I don't know." And they wouldn't let me go until I answered. And I'm going, but everything bad that's ever happened to me, when I look back on it now, it was transformative. I learned from it. I mean, it was bad at the time, but it's not bad now. And I finally gave up and said, well, it was losing this relationship. And I was able to get through it. They let me go at that point, but like I was stuck. They're like, you need to tell us the worst thing that's ever happened to you. And I'm like looking at that when I woke up going, all right, what was that about?
Right.
Was that a test, a test to see how I assess this stuff? I mean, I have no idea.
Right. And you could look at it, and you could ask 50 people and you're going to get 50 different interpretations.
Yeah.
But to me, that's like almost like they're pushing on you to get that point. What you said. I think you were there to say what you said, to yourself in the beginning, that every bad thing that's ever happened has been a transitional thing or learned from it, because we say that all the time about this journey that we're on. We're not sure where the road goes, but we're sure we're supposed to enjoy the journey and pay attention to it, and the people you meet along the way, like the 5 people you meet in heaven. I say that one all the time. You think the people that you're going to meet in heaven are going to be this person, because this was profound and this. And then the guy goes over and finds out it was the littlest things that were the most profound, that made the most difference in that person's life or his life, and changed things and going on, like touching a spinning top. If you don't touch it, it's just going to keep going in its, in its direction. But boy, you touch it, goes off in a different way. And I think that's a lot like these experiences for us, because to me, I always say this is like school. Whether we chose it or whatever's, a part of, we're here to learn, to get up to a better frequency, whatever that is, or vibration, and go over. And we're supposed to be like, wow, I don't want to do that again. But wait a minute. Yeah, maybe I do want to go back and try that one more time. But, and I freak people out because I say, from what I've heard, this isn't the only place you can reincarnate to.
Sure.
And if you come here, you're like automatically everybody's going, oh, there goes a badass. They're going back there, to that planet, that place, So I don't think it's supposed to be a smooth journey. I think we do learn more from the bumps. And I think
yeah.
if it was all beauty, we wouldn't appreciate it.
Well, imagine playing a video game that had no challenge to it.
Beautiful, yeah.
I mean, a video game you could just turn off. You're not living it, but at the same time, if this is a grander thing, and I think this life does matter. I think that everyone matters, and that
Yes.
we're all here for a reason. We may not understand that from this perspective,
Yes.
but it is important, even if it is a virtual reality, even if it is an illusion, which it certainly is to some degree.
Yes.
It's still important. There's something going on that needs to happen. And it may be not just the universe understanding itself, but it may be the universe trying to expand itself.
Could be.
We
And
may
it
be
needs
here
us
to help the
do it.
universe create something new.
Yeah, we just might be, just little sprockets in that keeps it all going. Because if you look at people and how they interact, I think we're getting that too. So we're all, a big part of that, and everything is connected from the earth to the sun to the trees to the birds to everything. And I think once we realize that, I think we can kind of just ease back a little bit and enjoy some more of the scenery, because we're missing so many beautiful things with our heads down and trying to avoid the looking up into the sun. But by gosh, when you do, it's so warm, and it's so nice,
No,
and
I don't know.
think
I'm not a fan of the sun.
you're not a fan of the sun at all.
Not particularly.
Yeah,
I like the
but
night.
yeah, me too. I mean, I gotta say,
Same.
being a bartender, we're all night people, but but boy, when you get out in that sun, and you feel that warmth. I mean, it is it's a difference. I think we all need a little bit of it. I think if we lived in the dark all the time, we'd be in trouble. But I do tend to. I don't like light. And I don't know, there's all kinds of things with, RH negative and, empaths and stuff and light. And I like it dark. And I, prefer dark pubs and things like that. And I'm definitely a night owl. But I do believe that getting into nature, like you said, makes all the difference. It kind of recharges the batteries. And, we need to do that a little bit more. Steve, did you have any questions for Seriah? I promised him an hour and a half, and we have kept him here 2.5 hours.
2.5.
Fine,
I love the man. Like I said, he
Thanks
put
so
us
much.
together, and that started other things, because then I encouraged you to write, and then met other people that have encouraged to write. So there's a lot of books that have came out of this, and just Seriah, he's an inspiration to a lot of people, whether they even realize it or not.
Absolutely true.
In some way, he's set people on this path. So he's one of the greats. Everybody need to listen to his show every chance we
Absolutely.
get. Go
Throw
back
that
and listen
link.
to all the old ones, and then anytime he puts a new one out. And so you're working on a book. I'm interested to
Me too.
see what you write. That's going to be fascinating.
So yeah, I'm so far up to 1992, and I think I have 4,500 words.
Yeah.
So it may be a 2-part autobiography, depending,
Nice.
I have more notes early on, because there were certain things that I felt like the reason I was doing it was to see if this stuff was real, in a sense. So I'm recording stuff and all this data, just like I was told to do. And I'm also I'm looking to see, like, if I'm writing it down, it's much easier to verify something. So if I have a dream and I write it down at the time, and then I say, was this that dream? I can go back and look. I don't have to rely on my memory or my memory twisting something.
Yeah.
And there was early on, I think it was in 91, I was given a dream, and I was given, when I have prophetic dreams, sometimes they're the standard prophetic dream where I dream this and then it happens. But other times it's very symbolic, and I'm given very specific information. And one of the things I'm realizing is a lot of times I'll be told to pay attention for people I'm looking for. And a lot of times I'll be given their age, which is interesting. And so I was shown this person, and it's like, this person is really, really important, and you must find her. And I did. It took me 6 years. But every single thing, including her age, was dead on. And at that point, I was kind of like, I don't know that I really need to keep notes anymore. Like I had been compulsive
Yeah.
about it up to that point, and I kind of relaxed it because I felt like, okay, I've proved my point. I've kept these notes, and they were accurate. So this is real. Whatever's going on is real. And I also got very content with her for a while, so I stopped keeping so many notes. And I wish I didn't. 'Cause so much weird stuff happened with her, and I probably just don't remember all of it. In fact, that was the thing I said when they said, "What's the worst thing that happened to you?" was the ending of that relationship, because that relationship was fantastic.
Mhm.
And,
Yeah.
but at the same time, because I was content, I wasn't moving forwards. So even that, when I look back on it, I'm like, well, I guess I'm glad it ended because I wasn't going anywhere when I was in that relationship. Like it
And I
wasn't
think
pushing me forwards.
that's such an interesting way of looking at stuff, though. I mean, if we all looked at that, I think it would pull us out of our, some of the holes we sit in and we dig for ourselves, we sit down in because we're scared to go to the next thing or do the next
Sure.
thing, because like I said in the beginning with the when you first say I can't, it's like, I think it's a funny way to put it, self curse, but it almost is to me, because words are spelling. I mean, you're listening to, you're putting it out in the universe.
Yeah.
If you go I can, how can I can be such a motivational thing and I can't isn't? You
Right.
can't have both. It's got to go both ways, like all of this stuff does, And it's just amazing how everybody touches everybody. Everybody in this chat is so grateful to find the people that are in this chat and like-minded people, and they just feel so much better when they leave than when they came in. So we're
Good.
doing something right. And I don't think it's us. I think it's everybody. It's the group collective. It's the energy. It's like hugging a tree. We're hugging each other and we're saying, look, I might not agree with every word you say, but I don't need to. I'm fine with who I am, and you don't need to validate my point.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it, because we might learn something from each other.
Even before I did
Be right
Where'd the
back.
Road Go,
Okay, hon.
with the last exit for the lost, one of my co-hosts one day said to me that I give the reason that everyone loves coming to the show and hanging out at the show and stuff is because I let people be themselves. And it wasn't really a conscious thing. I mean, but to me, that's just a natural response that I want people to be themselves, like unless they're complete a-holes, in which case they shouldn't be hanging around with me anyway.
Right.
But I mean, most people, it's just like, oh, you can be weird. It's fine. Enjoy yourself. Just be who you are. And so when she said that to me, I was like, cool. It's, I hadn't thought about it, but that's exactly the type of environment I want to have around me.
Yeah, and that's it, because when you're stifled like that and people try to put you in a box, they actually took you and put you in offices and little cubicles. It's an
Yeah.
actual box, and and then they give you, this artificial light and all this other stuff. You wonder how people got, very drony, and all the people that were free spirited and going to the drum circles or going out, and helping animals or going to nature and having all these outside, it's so much different. It's not a hard experiment. You're in it. It's not hard to figure it out at what's getting people through, and I deal with people a lot of the grief. I do a lot of PTSD with vets and things like that. Survivors of crime, really bad things. And, why me? I don't know, honey. I don't know why, but here's where we are, You're here, I'm here. This is what we're going to deal with now. You can choose to go, we can walk you through it. It's not, everybody's different. But what are you planning on doing on this side of it? You're going to let it rule everything, or can we do this? Is there something, we try to find a different path. It's not to shut down the journey or not look back, and you're not living in the past. It's more, that happened. This is what I can glean from that. Is there any good I can learn? Did I learn I was a survivor? Did I learn I was
Right.
a warrior? Did I learn that I could survive something? The scariest thing I thought would happen wasn't really that scary because I'm right here, that kind of thing. It was terrible, but I'm still here. And I think that's where, people kind of lose it on that, because I'll get people that just want to be in that. They don't know how to come out of it, like almost like the sun scares them. The light scares them. I know I'm good here, and that's a real thing too. But why did you go through it? What can we get through it? And if we can get them to that point of gleaning what I can from it, nothing I can change about it, I can change this. And that it's simple, and it's, easier for some than others. And then of course you got to get all the, the mental thing, where are you chemically? What are you taking? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's all part of it. But I really, really enjoy the journey now of people, these young people coming up and having abilities. And because now we have things like this podcast and your podcast and Steve's books and podcast and all of this different thing, and people in this chat, and everybody can get together and go, you know what, you're not alone. That happened to me. And this is what I did with it. And you're not crazy because your mom came and sat on the bed and told you something you need to hear. I can't prove it was your mom. You felt it was your mom. It smelled like your mom. It looked like your mom. It spoke like your mom. And you felt the love. But it could have very well been something else that was in a good way, showing you what you needed to see at the time to get through to the next part.
And it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
All that matters is the effect it had on you.
Absolutely. So
Like
when
that's what we say. Like, is this real? You go, well, does it matter if it's real if it affects you? It's real to you if it had an effect. So even if you can't empirically prove it, it doesn't matter. It had an effect on you. It changed you, and thus, on some level, it was real.
So
Yeah,
good. So good.
I found that when I started, I didn't talk about the Kundalini stuff for a while until I got a co-host who could kind of ask me questions as we went. And I really wasn't sure if I wanted to talk about it because I'd only met a handful of people at that point who had active Kundalini. But as soon as I talked about it, I started getting tons of messages from people saying, oh my God, this is what's been happening to me. I've never heard about this. And, now they have something to work with.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And then they can look out, take the path that they want. They can go, deep into, if they want to do the yoga or, or anything else, because there's so many things that you can do. But that's like the young people who imagine a young teenager that probably doesn't have the people in her family she could talk to, maybe, not a great home life or whatever. And again, that's going to make things manifest more boldly in different ways, And then you've got everything that works with that, and then the first thing they want to do is go into something that they don't quite understand and start getting down in the wrong path without knowing what they're doing, and then bad, so this is a great way for people to reach out and help other people that have the same thing, just like you just said, and try to discover it and figure out what to do with it and why do I have it and why am I getting it now? And I tell people too that just because like you get those people like, I don't believe in any of that stuff, and that's fine. You don't have to make that person believe,
exactly.
They're in their own journey, dealing with their own consciousness and what they can accept and what they've learned in their lifetime, and it's not your job to convince them, and they shouldn't be able to take anything from you because they don't believe what you went through.
I have a friend who's a very militant atheist, and somehow we got into this discussion of paranormal, and he's like, well, you would have to prove it to me. And I said, I don't have to prove anything to you. I don't care what you think.
Exactly.
You're welcome to think it's all not real. That's
Absolutely.
Okay. That's your choice. I don't have to prove anything to you.
Exactly. And it's also like I tell people, well, that's fine, because disbelief in gravity is not going to keep you from falling down the stairs. The things that are the things that are there are going to be there whether you believe it or not.
Right.
Right. And it's when we talk about belief and we talk about whether you want to call it faith or you believe in, the magic you're doing, or if you're Wicca, whatever, all of it is energy, and all of it is manipulating energy and understanding energy and getting to work, whatever your moral compass is, it is what it is, because some things that are labeled bad aren't really bad. You've been told they're bad. So you don't do them because they don't want you doing them, because you'll realize how much power you really have.
Exactly.
So that's another thing, that we've been stifled on a lot, So, when you realize that people are trying to control you and what you think you can do and not do, when you break out of that, you realize you're your own human being, you're your own vessel, and you're in charge of the square foot of real estate you're standing in. The rest of it you really can't do much about, but it goes with you wherever you go. So when you
yeah.
walk up into somebody else's things, you have to have the same respect for their square foot of real estate. And if we could just deal with that, you know, and just let people, you know, like you said, be who they are, as long as you're not coming over in mine and trying to tell me what, you know.
And realistically, most of us are not going to make the world a better place on a grand scale. Like we can't change, unfortunately, our government, even though it's supposed to be our government. They kind of do what they want. They're going to continue to do what they want because we have no real power to stop them. At least not at this point. But you can make a change in the world that's very dynamic just by being nice to people, just by being
Yes.
respectful to other people.
Yes.
You know, it's like, it's not hard to do, and it makes, you know, it can make a huge difference in someone's day if someone's nice, especially like retail workers and stuff like that, who are just
Absolutely.
constantly putting up with crap. To go out of your way to be nice to them, you know, they're like, oh, thank you. You know, like you can tell
I just did it today.
yeah.
You know, and the lady, you could tell she was just, you know, one more can in the bag, you know. I mean, it's just, oh, you know, looking at her watch like, I'm gonna get out of here, and you know, and I was just, how you doing today, sweetie? You know, and she just kind of looked at me. She kind of, like, I scared her at first, you know. I'm
You
like,
woke
I
up
can't
the
be-
robot.
Yeah, I can't be the first person to talk to you. And I'm like, no, really, how you doing? I've done what you do. I understand what you're going through. And I said, if you need me to stand here for a few minutes while you collect yourself, I'll hold back the line. I don't mind. So you want to hear what happened to me today? And I'm just like, you know me, I always got a story. And she just looked at me and smiled. She goes, I just got through my day. Thank you. You know, she said, yes, you are the first, you know, real smile. And, you know, and people talk to me. People are people, and you don't know what somebody else is going through in their day.
Exactly.
And absolutely.
Exactly.
If you can be nice, and you know what, Daniel Brinkley always says, you know, this is the guy that got hit by lightning 3 times, death experience, but he came back 3 times. And he said by the 3rd time, he just started hugging people.
Yeah.
And they'd ask him, and they'd say, you know, why are you such a hugger? Why, you know, trying to hug everybody? He said, honey, I'm not hugging you. I'm hugging me. Because when I get over there, I'm going to need that hug, and I'm going to feel it, and I'm going to need it. So think about it that way, because what you do to other people, I think you're going to be judging yourself on that. Who knows? It could be true. And at least here now you're putting out good energy, and let's get that flowing, because I think the earth could use as much good energy as it could get, you know.
There was
do you have anything else you want to say to everybody before
well,
I let you go out of here?
that just made me think of this Reddit post I saw recently.
Absolutely.
Where this guy who was in charge of hiring for the company, apparently what he would do is he would offer to take new hires out to dinner, and then he would go to this restaurant and tell the restaurant to make sure they got his order wrong. And so he's like, so if they bring him the wrong food and he either eats it or politely says, oh, hey, I think, you know, I actually ordered this, you know, or whatever, he's hired. But if he's rude to the people who got his order wrong, not getting hired.
Love it.
And I'm like, that is a great way to do that.
It is a great way to do that. See people in real time. I mean, I've given out that,
Yeah,
you know,
indeed.
that advice to my sons. Of like, when you're dating, said don't make any decisions until you've seen her go through a crisis, till you've seen her go through, you know, how she deals with other people out in, you know, in a real, you know, situation daily. How does she deal with, you know, this or that? And that goes either way, because when you're first dating, you're on your best behavior, and everybody's, you know, thing. Everybody always says, and once you get married, everything changes. So go through some real life experiences with the people and see how they handle it, and how her family handles it, and how everything else, because that's your future, you know.
That's also why it's so important to just be yourself, because if you're pretending to be something you're not, you're setting yourself up for disaster.
Oh, that's so true. Just be yourself, right, Steve?
Yep.
Yeah, we certainly are, aren't we, honey? We get on here. And look what you did, Seriah. Look at this. Now, I got to ask this, and then I'm going to let you go. Did you get one of your little voices that said you need to hook up Steve and Sysco because those 2 battle axes need to be together?
I'm very good at connecting people.
It's like, how can I get rid of these two people? I'll put them together and
it's-
send them off. And
it's actually been a joy in my life. I can't imagine looking back not having the stuff, being able to get the courage to reach out and have a podcast and interview people and just to talk to them and see what they think and to have people react to that and want to hear it is absolutely amazing. And then you hear that they read your book. And I loved it, and this, and and I'm just as happy for Steve and his success when he, when the things that happen, and it's just wonderful. I've met so many great people in this, and I can't thank you enough for doing that. So anytime you hear that, jump on that, and I'm sure you do at this point because boy, were you right. It's just been amazing, and it's really branched out. It's like dropping a pebble in the lake and the ripples that affect, and I think it's just been absolutely wonderful, and I can't thank you enough. And I think we should do this again soon. Let's do
Anytime.
it. Maybe we can get Adam on with us and have a blast. Is he still out there doing his stuff, Adam?
Sane?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
far as I know, yeah.
Conspiranormal, yeah.
Paranormal, yep, and he's doing the Strange Realities Conference again this year.
Nice.
So.
Absolutely. And I know Steve just got back from a great conference, and we're trying to get him out there more, and maybe one day I'll be able to give you a real big hug.
yeah, it's a UFO conference in San Francisco, and I'm not a UFO guy, and I prefaced it with that, but I had found some correlation between abductee memories and the memories of people that have gone missing and came back, what they saw, what they experienced. There's some definite overlap there, so it was appreciated. And the Strange Realities, I did that one last year remotely. I don't know if I get to do it in person this year or not, but maybe. I'm looking into things. I've got the travel bug now. I'm planning a trip probably around the end of May. I'm going to go up into Olympic National Park and shoot some footage and probably hit Seattle. And then I think probably around the end of August, I'm going to go to Alaska for a few days.
Wow. See? Look what we did. Isn't that awesome? So tell us again, Seriah, all about it. Please drop his links, Maud. I know you got the link out there. If you can catch that Camelio, but I'll tell you, every single one of the episodes, you're going to find something in there that you like, and you're going to get hooked just like, we did. It's great listening. It's questions that are, it's different. It's different. It's not your regular podcast. You're really going to get all kinds of different angles on things and make you look at things a little differently and think about stuff and reassess, because I think we're here not just to understand. Maybe we're not supposed to have any answers, but we're supposed to understand that things happen. They seem to be connected and maybe retroactive, like we cause different things to happen. And if we think about stuff like that, I think you'll consider what you're doing a little bit more carefully and how you treat people.
Yeah.
And, be like Daniel, hug everybody so you'll get hugs on the other side, And I can't thank you guys enough. Steve, what you got coming up?
Going to be going live on 13 past midnight. I'd meant to go tonight, but I'm probably going to wait until Tuesday. I've got your show tomorrow night, and then I've got a show right after yours. So I'll be busy tomorrow. But Tuesday, I'm going to bring 13 Past back. And otherwise, we've been trying to do a video a day over on missing persons and mysteries. And so far, we got some in the can. So we're going to try for at least 30 days straight of content over there. So go check it out. A lot of good stuff. We had one today where one of our team members may have solved a John Doe case. I'll watch that one. It's interesting.
Also, all of Word of the Road Go shows are available on the website and on the YouTube. They're not on all the podcatchers because I think they only store so many or only go back so far. But right back to the very first one, there's almost 1,000 shows on Where Did the Road Go at this point.
And that's on the website, and it's just wheredidtheroadgo.com.
Yep, wheredidtheroadgo.com, and the YouTube should have them all as well.
Mm-hmm. So there you go, guys.
And all the links. All the links are on the website as well. So
I love to play Where'd the Road Go, just random. I'll go in and just pick something that I haven't heard before, or one that's a favorite, and just play it again and see. Oh yeah, I remember this, or wow, never heard this one before. But it's always fascinating. It takes stuff to a whole different level, and even stories that backwards and forwards. Seriah usually has a different take on it, or makes you look at it in a different way.
And also, if you
we're-
like heavy music, thelastexit.org. There's, in
There
fact,
you
the
go.
oldest show on there
Yeah.
that I have archived is from 1996.
Ooh, that's amazing. That's
Some great,
absolutely
great
amazing.
music on there.
Guys, if I missed some of your questions, I apologize. The way I'm seeing it tonight, I apologize if some of them went through. I'll try to go through and save some of them. Maybe I can send them to Seriah. I know he's real personable. You can reach out on his
Absolutely.
YouTube as well and ask questions. He's gonna,
And
we're gonna have him back.
All my contact info's on the website, my Facebook, everything.
There you go.
Actually, the Where'd the Road Go Facebook and the group is there, but you can find me on Facebook at Seriah Azkath, and I'm the only one out there
Guarantee
with that
it.
name. So
Guarantee it.
Love it.
And that is a great Facebook group. If you're still on Facebook, get involved. And there's a lot of great people in there that really respond to you. If you have questions or you want to put up a picture and ask about it, that's a good place to do it too. And
Yep.
any weird stuff you see, put it out there because, gosh, we got to keep trying to figure, not so much figure it out, but be more comfortable with our surroundings because there's definitely stuff going on that we're not going to understand. And you know what? That's okay. Like you said, the lady that I'm going to leave it with this, that calls me up and says, I was just talking to my sister, about our father and how much we missed him. And, he really loved birds. And I was going to put up a bird feeder and think about him. And I think that I highly recommend you do stuff like that. Put stuff up in their name. Remember a happy memory with them. And that way, every time you look at it, you'll feel happy. And if you feel happy, perhaps they will get that energy as well. If not, you still feel good. And now she goes outside, goes to get in her car to go to the office. There's a red cardinal on her rear view, side view mirror. And it stayed, like a bird will usually scatter when you approach it. And she just slowed, and it just stayed. And it kind of just looked at her. And she calls me up after work. She says, Sysco, do you think that my dad sent that for me as a message? I said, if I could just have a message, I would feel better. And I said, how did you feel when you first saw it? And why? Because I felt warmth and I felt great and I felt happy. So why are you trying to talk yourself out of it?
Right.
Roll with it, baby. And I think we need to stop talking ourselves out of being happy.
Yes.
And I'm so happy to have you guys on. Thank you so much, Seriah. It's been
Absolutely.
way too long. I should have asked earlier, but I was just like, oh man, I got to have a little more practice and, stuff like that because it meant an awful lot to me and you mean an awful lot to me. And I just thank you so, so much for, everything that you're putting out there. I think it's wonderful. And Steve, you know how I feel about you, yo rattlesnake. I love you terrible. Love you terrible.
And you're both awesome. So
Thanks,
anytime, just let me know.
Absolutely. We'll be there. All right, everybody. I hope you enjoyed everything. I'm sorry if I missed some questions. Y'all mean the world to me. Bacon to everybody. Mods, throw out that bacon. Bacon is love. And I love you. Good night, everybody. Thanks
night,
again,
everybody.
guys.
See you soon.
Love y'all. Be good humans. Eat the good cookie and keep them big fat candles lit. Good night. See you tomorrow. Maybe. Maybe.